All right. Okay, so Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and we'll have some others join us here in a little bit. But did Brother Tobiah, did Sister Dahlia have a song, or you want to share maybe, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear one from her. Maybe Richard, if you have one, brother, after her.
Yeah, maybe you could open up us in prayer, and someone could blast that shofar.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys have a shofar there with you? Shofar.
Oh, hallelujah.
Father Yahweh, we thank you for another Shabbat. I pray that everyone here is blessed today as we explore your Torah, your instructions, Father, and in the way of Yeshua. I pray for all those that are not able to join us this morning for whatever reason, and the rest of the body, the Mishpachah, Father, on this day, that we have a blessed, anointed, set-apart day with you. And we just pray for Brother Anthony right now, too, in his time of loss, and just be with him and comfort him and his family. In Yeshua's name we pray, and we thank you. Amen.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Throughout the week, said the that I found. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah.
Praise Yah, sister. Hallelujah. Okay. How about Brother Richard? You got one ready?
Sure. Amen.
Sorry
Thank
about
you
my.
for that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my son.
Dahlia.
My son was feeling a little ill yesterday evening, and I was checking on him, and then we we uh, we found out there was a there was a guy running around outside out here with a horse mask on. I don't know what he was doing or what, but he's like he's like a, I guess he's
Wild
maybe
horse.
a local or something. He's literally got like a horse mask on, and he was running around the parking lot shaking his head and doing crazy. I don't know what's going on. So anyway,
Probably means something, huh?
I was just like trying to figure out what's happening there. Sorry about that.
Huh.
So anyway,
That's weird.
yeah, go ahead, brother.
When he rolls up his sleeves and put on the ribs, our God is an awesome God. There is thunder in his footsteps and lightning in his fist. Our God is an awesome God. And y'all wasn't joking when he kicked him out of Eden. It wasn't for no reason that he shed his blood. His return is very soon, so you better be believing that our God is an awesome God. Our God, he's an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. Wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God. And when the sky was starless in the void of the night, our God is an awesome God. He spoke into the darkness and created the light. Our God is an awesome God. Judgment and wrath he poured out on Sodom. Mercy and grace he gave us at the stake. I hope that you have not quickly forgotten that our God is an awesome God. That our God is an awesome God. Because our God, he's an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. Wisdom, power, and love. God is an awesome God. Our God, he's an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. Wisdom, power, and love. Our God is an awesome God.
Oh, Chris, you got crazy stuff going on over there in the parking lot? Or outside of, it sounds like going crazy out there? Or maybe he's busy. Maybe they can't hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, you guys got me back here. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. So what's going on? You said you got something that's unusual going on outside.
Oh yeah, there was a guy that was running around out here. They're doing a spiritual warfare, like study today on spiritual warfare and all, and uh, and there was a guy out here before the event started that was he had like a horse mask on. I don't know who he was, where he came from, but he was like just dancing around the parking lot, and somebody said he went around behind the building. I didn't even see. I don't even know where he went. So I was just kind of I'm like posted up over here by the front door, just kind of looking out to see what's going on. But
Well, I don't know. He inhabits our praise, so maybe it's time for you to sing a song.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't have an instrument handy right now, but maybe I can get a hold of one here before we're done and have somebody go get one for me. But yeah, I I appreciate your praise song and Brother Richard there, and maybe another
Use your
blast.
voice and clap your hands. If you
Maybe, maybe another blast on the shofar, and maybe we can sing a special with that, huh? How are you
okay.
guys doing? How you been doing over there in Missouri?
Oh, it's been rough, but I praise him anyway. You know, I'm working on that song of Moshe really hard. Like as sick as I am, laying in the bed, I downloaded when we were out one time. I downloaded an instrument thing. It just so happened to have where I can practice the strings on the guitar. it's not the same, but it takes the pressure off a little bit and lets me keep practicing even when I'm weak. So, I love Yahuwah anyway.
Amen. Very nice. I love it. It's a nice blast on the shofar. Getting it ready for Yom Teruah coming up here too. So that'd be. I'm really looking forward to the feast days here, and I hope everybody has a good spot picked out for Sukkot, or at least praying about that. And so anyway, let's we'll go ahead and get started in the Torah here today. All right. So we got our Torah portion is in the sidebar there. I'm gonna post it again. Let's see here, and it is Ki Tetze, when you go forth, and this spans from Deuteronomy chapter 21, starting in verse 10, through chapter 25, verse 19. Okay, and then we have the Haftarah portion in the prophets there of Isaiah, chapter 52, verse 13, through chapter 54, verse 10. And then we have some New Testament passages in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 27 through 32, and 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. So as usual, we read a chapter at a time and discuss the whatever the Father's given us there from those passages, and we try to be mindful of the time we're talking. Maybe keep your responses to around 2 minutes or less to keep the flow going and give everybody else a chance to share too. And whenever you go to read, just let us know what version you're reading from so we can follow along on ours and reference that later if needed. We always encourage you to try and have a concordance, a lexicon, or an interlinear Bible if you can, so you can look and see what the original Greek or Hebrew words are that are used there, and for better understanding and clarity, and also with the Strongs, like we've kind of talked about before too, that we don't just take Mr. Strong's word for it either, but we search a matter out and we see how that word is used in other places, and just study these things out, study to show ourselves approved, and just really be like the Bereans and be students of the word. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started with the reading, and I want to see who would like to start us out with chapter 21 today in Deuteronomy, verse 10 of chapter 21 there. Somebody like to get us started?
Yeah, Chris, I'll do it.
Okay. Thank you, brother.
That'll be the King James Version.
Okay.
When you go forth to war against thine enemies, and Yah thy Elohim hath delivered them into your hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and you have a desire unto her, that you would have her to be your wife, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails, and she shall put the raiment of her captivity off her, and shall remain in your house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she will be your wife. And it will be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall let her go wherever she will, but you shall not sell her at all for money. You shall not make merchandise of her, because you have humbled her. And if a man have two wives, one beloved and another hated, then they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated. And if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be, when he makes his sons to inherit that which he has, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn first, before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. And if a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, he will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of the city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of the city shall stone him with stones, so you shall put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. And if a man have committed a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but you shall in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of God, that thy land not be defiled, which Yahuwah your Elohim gives you for an inheritance.
All right. Thank you, brother. I set you as the co-host just in case I get logged out or something here with the signal, but thank you for that. So let's open it up here. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on that or questions on that chapter? We have some that would use that passage right there, and they kind of like to mock people that follow Torah with that passage right there that he just read about, stoning children or whatever. And
Yeah, well,
I even heard
that's talking about an adult son.
Yeah.
People say, no, you're going to stone your children? Well,
That's one of the biggest ones they like to pull out of there and take out of context and try to throw it out there like, oh, okay, so if you're going to do that, if you're going to keep the law, then you need to stone your children. They love to.
We read our Bible and do what our Bible says.
Yeah, it's, I don't know many, 6-year-olds that are drunkards and gluttons, So yeah, it's definitely talking about an adult son, but it's also, I've heard people say at a Sukkot festival, like, oh, well, if we're supposed to keep the words for as they were written, I would have already had to done stone a bunch of people's children here. And I'm like, you can't just pick up stones and start throwing them at children, that they didn't get it. The parents brought their son to the elders. The parents had to bring that child.
He was bringing a curse among the people.
But I was curious if anybody had any thoughts about the instructions about having her shave her head and trim her nails. If anybody had anything that came to their mind about the significance of those instructions.
Yeah, on that, brother, I don't know if somebody else has something on that, but I've always kind of thought that has something to do with how that impurities can kind of come out into the hair and into the nail. Your fingernails and your toenails are a type of hair as well. So the nails are essentially a form of a hair. It's like the same type of material made out of keratin and other things. But it's interesting because, like, whenever for example, people do like drug tests, right, on people. People can kind of falsify that with the urine and all, but with a hair test, they can take a hair sample and test that and get much more accurate results, and they can see much further back when somebody might have been taking some substances or whatever. So that's interesting that that they have them trim their nails and shave their head. It's almost like kind of a form of cleansing almost or something.
If you read if you read verse 11, it says when we see among the captives a beautiful woman, right? Also, if you cut off her hair and her nails, right, it will also give you a chance of a whole month to not be looking at her as an item, right, but rather, as a person, you know, also, so, you know, you know what I'm saying? She's not going to be looking the same if you cut her hair and her nails. So,
I like how detailed the father is. This is just amazing. Because when you're at war, you're completely stressed out. And there's you see some good things that belongs to. Remember Saul? He kept. They always sometimes. Who's that guy also that in Jericho he took some garments and kept it in his tent. There's just always something that attracts us that we want to just gravitate towards. And he actually put the word beautiful woman, not any kind of woman, just a beautiful woman. I mean, here you are, you're at war, you notice one beautiful woman, you're like, you know what? I like that. He goes, and you desire to take her to be your wife. This is amazing. So out of everybody that should die, this woman survives. And then she gets grafted into Israel. She crosses over his threshold. I mean, her beauty saves her and joins Israel. And she actually gets to be a mother in Israel because, if she has children for him but I just see so much mercy in this, and she gets to bewail her father and her mother. And there's just so much in here that I don't think we can get to the bottom of it. It's amazing. And also the son that gets the son, the vagabond child, the rebellious son, which also is an act of mercy because his better father makes an example out of one, so everyone will see, and then the rest wouldn't do likewise. So, yeah, it's. I don't think we can. I don't think we can digest this. It's going to take like several Torah portions. Pretty good.
So that the children see and hear and fear. Yeah. Praise Yah.
Yeah, I just want to further point out, like what you were saying. You said her beauty, but it had to be more than that. In the midst of all the chaos of war, this woman's out fetching water, and you took note of her while you're holding your shield up and people are coming at you with a sword. You're dodging bullets and whatnot. You notice this girl. She's pretty special.
Well,
Did you say dodging bullets?
What I seen
that must be some really, really good shooter with the bow and arrow, coming at you like a bullet.
Dodging arrows and the smooth stones in the slings, right?
Yeah. I saw it as like after the war, because I see a lot of instruction in the scripture where they put everyone under the ban, like they did in Jericho, except for Rahab, because her heart had belief, and her actions bore witness of her belief, and those of her household were spared. But when they gave instructions to put everyone under the ban, the only other instruction our father said when they went to war was to put under the ban all of the males and all of the women who have known a man. So that left only the maidens. So I saw it as the only captives they kept were the maidens. They even brought some of the women who had borne children one time, and Moshe sent them all back out of the camp to put to death the women who had borne children and to cleanse himself for 7 days. So I seen that in this particular instance, I attributed it to be in the same type of situation where they had spoil, so to speak, from the war, which is in the form of girls who were still yet maidens. In this particular instance, the beauty may not even have been an outwardly beauty. It may have been an inwardly thing, like as in our Father saying, the beauty of a woman is by her actions and her deeds.
Somebody had to take care of all this.
So, but the hair, I always pondered about the hair, because the hair is something what is it with our Father with hair, like the Nazarite vow, like you're talking about, Chris. Our hair holds all this, anything that we consume or put in our body, whatever we subject ourselves to. And our hair, in a Nazarite vow situation, if we become defiled in whatever the instructions of the Nazarite are, defiled by a dead body or whatnot, then the hair is shaved off and started all over again. Because the hair that is offered at the end of the completion of the Nazarite vow is supposed to be pure, is grown during a time of pureness that they abstain from certain things. Like those things that, like you were saying, testing the hair to see if you have this. And if they tested a Nazarite's hair, it would show that he didn't have grapes or fruit of the vine, and so on. And but anyway, so spiritual is our hair. To our Father, there's something spiritual about our hair. The strength that Samson had from the locks of his hair. There's some spiritual connection and set apartness to our Father that are tied to our hair. Through all aspects of everything in the Scripture has to do with hair. So my contemplation of this was that, being that this woman was going to be a wife of a set apart one of the children of Israel, and that she came from a foreign nation that was put out. Our Father was allowed to be removed and stricken, and her parents and them were killed and put under the ban. So she would be mourning her father and her mother because of the instructions I just talked about putting to death the man, all the males and all the women who've known a man. So her father and mother are done. But its significance would be, that I could see, is spiritual. It's like a cleansing house. It's like removing any of the ties of the ways of her people where she came from. The spiritual connection, the hair, giving a clean slate, growing new hair, not carrying anything, remnants of whatever practices or ways or spirituality that came from the nation where she was taken from, that it be started over anew.
That's true.
That's what I see.
In Africa, if you shave your head as a woman, it's like it's a sign of a new beginning. It's a sign of starting a new life. Starting a new thing. Like something happens to you, somebody defiles you, somebody, and then you just shave your head and you're like, you know what, I'm getting over that. I'm starting all afresh. But another thing I don't get is like, we can't marry a woman that's already have a child. I mean, I'm just asking that. I mean, it's what's so big about them having children, that they can't take women that have children. What is I don't get the understanding in that.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm not able to raise my hand.
Yes, sir.
But,
go ahead.
I mean, he's giving us instructions here. What defiles the land? What defiles us? What defiles the woman, And here specifically, I have highlighted 22 and 23. You see here instructions on, if a man committed a sin worthy of death, then he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on a tree. But 23, let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim. We know that Yeshua did not hang, they buried him, And you'll see in Acts 3:13, he says, Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us, for it has been written, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's good, to press in on that for a minute. Some people use that passage to say, see, the Torah brings curses, and it sure does. That's exactly what happens if we disobey, if we walk our own way, and not his way. It absolutely does. But yeah, how Yeshua became a curse. How did Yeshua become a curse for us? By taking on the curses that are pronounced in the Torah for going our own way, for going after other Elohim that we have not known, to do our own thing and not do the Father's way, right? So, yeah, absolutely, it pronounces curses. But they
That's
they want to take that verse though out of context and be like, see, it just brings curses. It's just curses, No, there's
right.
there's blessings that come from obeying and curses for disobeying. That is the key right there, is to understand that the curses come from the disobedience. And so Yeshua became a curse for us because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Elohim.
Yeah, and I think I want to read the verses actually up above that in Acts. For as many as are of works of Torah and under the curse, for it has been written, cursed to everyone who does not continue in all that has been written in the book of the Torah to do them. And that no one is declared right by Torah before Elohim is clear. For the righteous shall live by belief, and the Torah is not of belief, but the man who does them shall live by them.
Amen. Amen. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts on 21 here before we go to 22, or on that what Richard read?
Well, I think Jacob had a question about the kids. Why he couldn't marry them, if they had kids. I think it's a purification of just having maybe a woman that has not been promiscuous. Or whatever.
Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
It has to do with the flesh is becoming one, probably, when you think about spiritual connection, and that when especially the women that have bore children to another man, they have had the man's blood run through their body with his DNA mixing with theirs, just carrying the child in the womb. I mean, science proves everything that Scripture says, and it basically gives the whys and the whatnot. Another thing is, okay, there's a spiritual connection, but then also now you've got all these little virgin baby girls, because the boys are put to death. They don't even get an option to be a virgin or not. You got all these little infant baby girls that were born to these women that are dead now. What are you going to do with those? You had to have your nursemaids and stuff like that. So that just shows how women got put into men's houses under other women, and how nursemaids were used and things like that. It gives more reason to why all these women exist. What was a wet nurse? She was a lactating woman waiting to nurse children.
It's also yeah, go ahead.
Also, a maiden can take a child and nurse it, and if it suckles long enough and the hormones start exchanging between her and the baby, if she looks at it while it's suckling, her brain will tell her body to produce milk for that child, like in the case of Ruth laying the child in Naomi's lap and Naomi nursing the child. She did not bear a child. So that, just gives further proof of all of those things also.
It's also important to remember too that these are specific groups of people. These are specific nations that he is putting under the ban in this way. It's not all Gentile nations wherever they go and whoever they encounter. It's a very specific list of those that he repeats again and again, from Exodus all the way through the rest of the Torah. And so it's and we know that those people, he said, were guilty of doing atrocious things, even passing their own children through the fire to Molech and to other false Elohim, and this is detestable to Yahweh. And so he put these nations under the ban. And remember that the children of Israel were in bondage in Egypt, The entire time they were in bondage in Egypt, the Canaanites in that land were doing things to defile the land, and like I said, passing their own children through the fire and sacrificing them to false Elohim and the doctrines of demons. So he was purging that land of the defilements before he even brought the children of Israel into it. And probably giving it Sabbath rest and all too, like he does later on when the Israelites fail to keep the Shabbat for the land, the rest for the land. So there's a lot to that, but what was it that we read? Was it a few portions back where if they approach a city that's not under the ban, that they, but it's in their land, and they approach that city and they offer terms of peace. If they accept the peace, then those people kind of become, they kind of get brought into the camp, but as laborers or whatever. But they don't have to kill them because they're not under the ban. So it was a very specific list of those nations: the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites, all that. So, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, if anybody's got the scripture on that, I'd like to see it, because I remember it. He distinctly, Abba distinctly divided it into two pieces. He said that those from among these nations you shall put away completely, all that are under the ban. But all those cities that are far from here and not among these nations, which I'm delivering over to you, you shall slay the males and the women who have known a man, but you shall keep alive the maidens. I don't see any other instruction like a neutral, like a third.
That was
A and B.
That was if they didn't accept the terms of peace, though. They didn't have to just go in and
right. Yeah, the always offered terms of peace. Right. Yeah. Yeah. After it's apparent that you have to go to war with them because they will not accept the terms of peace.
And this
was the instructions for A and B.
And then we had the people, I think it was the Gibeonites that they kind of tricked the Israelites into making a terms of peace with them by dressing, they dressed in rags and they made themselves look poor, and they said, oh, we're just nomads and we're poor and we want to serve you and all that, and they made peace with them, and then so then they had to keep those terms. And then later on, the Gibeonites lead them, or the Gibeonites Gibon was the place where in the book of Judges the brother, the man with his concubine, they wanted to take him and lay with him, and he put his concubine outside of the house and all, and that was the Gibeonites that did that. It says they were sons of Belial, so so it's interesting how a pact with the wrong group like that, they had to keep their word. They had to honor their word. Let your yes be yes, your no be no, vows, oaths, agreements, covenants, whatever. And they had to honor that. But then it came back, later on in the future to essentially to bite them. Came back around to bite them, and became a problem. And the sons of Benjamin were sojourning with those Gibeonites and did not. They should have put those people out and stoned them or whatever for those actions, and instead they allowed it to happen and basically were in agreement with that wickedness. So yeah.
So Deuteronomy 20 is where you were talking about that, Chris. It's the same place where we're talking about when you're doing battle with another nations. Abba gives instructions about the trees that are there, like what to do and not to do with what trees. But the Deuteronomy 20, verse 10, 11, 12, let's see. It says, when you draw near to a city to fight against it, you shall make a call for peace to it. Verse 11, Deuteronomy 20. And it shall be that if it accepts your call for peace and shall open to you, then all the people found in it are to be your compulsory labor and serve you. But if it does not make peace with you, you shall fight against it, you shall besiege it. And Yah, your Elah, shall give it into your hands, and you shall smite every male in it with the edge of the sword. Only the women and the little ones and the livestock and all that is in the city and all its spoil you shall take for yourself for plunder. And you shall eat the enemy's plunder which Yahuwah your Elah gives you. Do so to all the city
which are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations. Only the cities of these peoples, which Yahuwah your Elah gives you as an inheritance, do you not keep alive any that breed, but you shall certainly put them under the ban, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hiwite, the Jebusite, as Yahuwah your Elah has commanded you. Those are the cities that says you put all under the ban, which I believe where Rahab fell into that category in Jericho. Those of Jericho, but Rahab was the exception because her heart was of our father in belief, that she had belief. But it's A and B right here. It says, after you do the terms of peace, if you have to go to war with them, these nations that are titled here, you put all under the ban. But those who are all the cities, do so to all the cities which are very far from you, which are not of the cities of these nations.
Right.
That includes all.
But that's within the boundaries of their land, though. He's not telling them to go off to Egypt and go off to Assyria and take over their cities, but he's talking about the nations, that the inhabitants of their land that he's set apart for them. So yeah, it's important to make a distinction between the very specific list of nations that were completely under the ban and the other nations that were in the outskirts of their territory and their promised land. So very good, very good. Okay, let's go.
Right.
Let's go on to 22, Brother Tobiah. You want to read 22 for us, brother, or somebody got that handy?
Sure, I can do that. Give me a second to get back where I'm at.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. When you see your brother's ox or his sheep going straying away, you shall not hide yourself from them. Return them to your brother without fail. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall return it to him. And so you do with his donkey, and so you do with his garment, and so you do with whatever your brother loses, which he has lost, and you have found. You are not allowed to hide yourself. When you see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down on the way, you shall not hide yourself from them. Help him raise them without fail. A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does this is an abomination to Yahuwah, your Elah. When you come upon a bird's nest along the way, in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the egg, do not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go without fail, and take the young for yourself, so that it might be well with you, so that you shall prolong your days. When you build a new house, then you shall make a parapet for your roof, so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house when one falls from it. Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seeds, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Do not put on a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together. Make tassels on the four corners of the garment with which you cover yourself. When any man takes a wife, and shall go into her, and shall hate her, and shall make abusive charges against her, and bring an evil name on her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find her a maiden. Then the father and the mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the proof of the girl's maidenhood to the elders of the city at the gate. And the girl's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he hates her. And see, he has made abusive charges against her, saying, I did not find your daughter a maiden. And yet these are the proofs of my daughter's maidenhood. And they shall spread the garment before the elders of the city. And the elders of that city shall take that man and punish him, and fine him 100 pieces of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name on a maiden of Israel. And she is to be his wife, and he is not allowed to put her away all his days. But if the matter is true, that the girl was not found a maiden. Then they shall bring out the girl to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done wickedness in Israel to whore in her father's house. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. When a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. Thus you shall purge the evil from Israel. When a girl who is a maiden is engaged to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and shall stone them to death with stones, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. But if a man finds a girl who is engaged in the field, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do no matter to the girl. The girl has no sin worthy of death. For the matter is like a man who rises against his neighbor and kills him. For he found her in the field, and she cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. When a man finds a girl who is a maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife, because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. A man does not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's skirts.
Are you with us, Chris?
Well, what are some of your thoughts about what was just read?
Well, there's a lot there. But at the very last sentence, the man does not take his father's wife nor uncover his father's skirt. That's a scripture in Leviticus 18:17. It says, don't uncover the nakedness of your father's wife, for it is your father's nakedness. I kind of think that in the case of Noah, where it says he uncovered the nakedness of his father, I think he is talking about lying with his father's wife. That is the nakedness of his father. That's what Leviticus 17, Leviticus 18.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. For many years people used to think that was Noah's nakedness, that because he was naked. No, it was the nakedness is of either your brother's nakedness would be his wife, or your uncle's nakedness would be your aunt, or your father's nakedness would be his wife, or one of his concubines, or something like that. It's not his actual nakedness, but his, whatever belongs to him's nakedness.
Yeah, it's Leviticus 18, verse 7. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you do not uncover. She is your mother's. You do not uncover her nakedness. Oh, Leviticus 18:8. Sorry. The nakedness of your father's wife you do not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. So the nakedness of Noah was his wife, which would have been the mother of Ham. This Genesis 9:22 says Ham uncovered the nakedness of his father. So yeah, that's I just recently in the past year we just recently come to the understanding of to see what's really that being said there.
Yeah, that's been a very popular misunderstanding, for quite a long time. But you're right. That's what that means.
Well, praise Yah for eyes to see and ears to hear. Certainly, we are tired of the deceptions that we've been walking in, and we have swallowed up and been handed down to us from our forefathers. So, even though some of these things are difficult for us to accept, we're thankful, praise Yah, that we're able to be humbled by them and come to the understanding. But yeah, there's a lot in that chapter. Does anybody got anything, comments or questions about chapter 22?
I got a question. How did you guys bring that up with the nakedness of Noah? Was Canaan in the picture? Isn't Canaan Ham's son?
Right. Canaan is the son of Ham. So that's a good question, my brother. If you have any revelation on that, I've been questioning that with our father for a while, because it does mention Canaan. It does mention several times. When it mentions Ham, it always mentions that Ham was the father of Canaan. It does mention Ham being the father of Canaan before it mentions Canaan uncovering the nakedness of his father. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it happened in that order, because I've contemplated that too, because the curse that Noah put isn't on Ham. The curse puts the Ham on Canaan, the offspring of Ham. So I've had the same question come up in my mind is, was Canaan a production of Ham being with his mother like Lot's daughters were with their father? They produced the Ammonites and the Moabites. The father of the Moabites, the father of the Ammonites were the sons that were produced by Lot's daughters laying with their father, which is under Leviticus 18. Don't do this. Don't lay with these. Don't bring offspring between these two. And So here we have that same situation, that Canaan could have been the offspring of Ham and his mother, the nakedness of Noah, which is his wife. Even though in the text it does mention that Ham is the father of Canaan, maybe twice even, before it ever mentions that he uncovered the nakedness of his father, but it doesn't necessarily mean it happened in that order. So I don't know if you see anything. I haven't studied it out fully, but I've questioned it too. Thank you for sharing, my brother, because it questions it in my mind, and when I hear my brothers ask questions, it makes me want to go seek even more sometimes than my own thoughts, you know.
Well, yeah, as you were just talking about it, it popped in my mind that just like what you were just assuming is, was actually Canaan an offspring of Ham and Noah's wife. It just popped up in my mind like, wow.
Right. So so nobody's saying that that's the solid truth. It's just all brought up as a question. It's something that we're all pondering as we come to more understanding. The question is our mind. What was Canaan a product of Ham and then that wrongful union? Similarly to Lot and his daughters. So yeah, it's I'll be happy to hear anybody could share any insight into that now or in the future, because that's a question that I would like an answer to. Praise be to our Father.
With regard to that, Tobiah, it's been my understanding through some of the studies I've gone through that it was Canaan who actually did the violation, and Ham discovered it, which is why down in Genesis 9:24 it says Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. And throughout Scripture, it's always Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. It in an order of their birth. So I think that Ham wasn't the younger son. It's referred to there as Canaan, because there was in that culture there was no such thing as a grandfather or grandson. It was always the son of, going down through the generations. So his younger son would have been Canaan.
Oh yeah. Thank you, brother. Yeah, you're right, because they didn't do the grandfather, great grandfather. They would say, like we're all sons of Noah here.
Correct.
Yeah,
So that's how I understand it. It was Canaan who did the violation. Ham discovered it, and it was Shem and Japheth who covered, went backwards and covered the nakedness, or in the Hebrew is nudity, the erval, which is nudity. That's just my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, on on uncovering the nakedness, the what you said, erva, is actually 6172 in the Hebrews Aramaic Strongs, and it's simply says nudity, nakedness, shame, unclean, uncleanliness, and of course that word erva. You go up to 6168, has a very says make naked, poured out, poured, spreading, emptied, uncover, discover. Means to pour out, make bare, destroy, spread oneself out. The word means to pour out until the Spirit be poured out upon us from on high. To make bare.
Hey, I'm
Right
just
on. Yeah,
wondering.
that's where we have to have discernment. Go ahead, bud.
I'm just wondering. Is that same word? Is that used? Is that same Hebrew word is used when Adam and Eve was trying to cover their nakedness?
Well, let's look it up. Do you have access? What Strong's number did you say that was, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that would be, well, actually, was it nakedness said, or was it naked? I think they said they were both naked, right? They were both naked, the man and the woman, right? Which would be Genesis 2:25. Is that what you're talking about?
It's Irum, which means nudity.
I cross-reference it to the word that was.
Well, naked and nakedness have different meanings.
Well, you can go by what Strong.
But
But you're talking about that Genesis 2:25.
yeah, because they were scared and they sewed fig leaves together because they were naked. Is that the same word used in the concordance?
Says here, yes. Well, it's all Rome, which is nude, either partially or totally naked. All Rome is an adjective, means naked. The first occurrences is in Genesis 2:25, and they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. So it's a different word. It's all Rome in that Genesis 2.
Awesome.
Yeah. The nakedness we're talking about originally is Strong 61:2. Erva.
I'm gonna look that up. Thank you.
Words. That's
Thank
why
you.
I got to take the Strong's definition with a grain of salt. You're getting definitions from men who were never called to keep the Sabbath day. They were never called to turn back to the Torah. And if you read some common words that we know today that our fathers put in our heart, that are Hebrew words that are of the Torah, some of these men that wrote these definitions don't even really know what the definition of that word is. So the most valuable thing that I find to use the Strong's for, because you can't count on what their definitions state that the meaning of the word is, because they didn't have an understanding of the true meaning of the word sometimes. And the most valuable thing is what you're talking about there, brother, is this word the same word? Because they translate all through, especially the KJV and a lot of translations, they translate the same word as different words everywhere, wherever they see fit. And some of the words don't even belong there. Because, King James had 40 some odd different people doing a translation of that scripture, and they all took different sections and worked on different pieces. So this group over here may have translated a word one way, and they translate that same word completely different somewhere else. So we got a jumbled up mess to work with. That word nakedness 54 times is translated the word erva that we're talking about here. And they do a pretty solid job. 50 of those 54 times they translate it as nakedness, and only 4 times they translate it as something other, as in shame, unclean, or uncleanness. So, but there's other places in the text, like you just found out, so Richard just found out, looked it up for us, thank you, Brother Richard, that they put the word nakedness in, or naked, and it's not the same word. It's a different word. It wasn't intended to be same word, it's a different word. So, praise Yah. I don't know what's going on with Brother Chris. If he lost connection, I didn't even look to see if it's still connected or not. But it says he's connected. But yeah, they're dealing with things out there, so we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. They're really out there right now. You know, we got to visit them, praise Yah, and our brother Chris is very helpful to me and those of my household. We've been going through things. A lot of our brothers and sisters are going through things, and a lot of attacks going on, physical and spiritual things happening. Busy time seems to be in a lot of households, a lot of lives of our brothers and sisters. A lot of us are having to find out, you know, what it really, truly, where there are a lot of endurance going on. A lot of enduring is needed right now in these times and these days. And, I'm thankful that, was it 2 weeks ago now, we got to see Brother Chris and them in Wichita. And he talked about going up to South Dakota where he's at now. And I know there's a brother up there he's with that is really on fire for our Father. And he's where our Father needs him to be. He's in the middle of a battle of sorts up there that we don't necessarily know or understand, but just know that there's things going on where Brother Chris is that we need to stay close to our Father and keep him and those that are there in our thoughts and prayers, because things are happening.
I just had
praise
one
God.
other
You know,
here.
sorry.
I just had one other thing here, Baya, in 22, and that is, I might be experiencing some of this myself actually. Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. And do not plow the ox and the donkey together. You know, do not put garments together and put those tassels on, as it says in Numbers, 15:38 or so. But I have these planters in my windows. Well, I have lettuce in one, and I have I put sweet peppers and peppers in the other, and I put there is onions and kale in the other. Well, there's one plant growing on the sweet pepper side. That's a mixed one, and there's like the onions are growing, and the kale's dead, but the lettuce is flourishing. I mean, it's like 2 foot high. I don't know, you know, if it has to do with that, but I'm not going to do that no more. I'm going to plant it all just the same there. And then, you know, using the ox and the donkey, you know, you can't, they're going to go different ways. They just don't, you know, you can't get nothing done. And I think that's one reason why he says, you know, don't marry into, you know, with an alien, and you two should be yoked, you know, because you're going to get the plowing done that needs to be done, you know, because the people say that Yeshua was a carpenter, but, you know, there's lots to think maybe he wasn't a carpenter. That you know, the garments. I mean, he even knows what's good for us in clothing, because in the properties in wool and the properties in linen alone, they are great for us, but when you mix them, they cancel out each other, so you're getting zero. They make zero out of that. But that's just something I've sort of had here on the highlighted.
Yeah, praise God, brother. We're seeking understanding on all those things too. We're thankful to understand the qualities and properties of wool and linen, and that when they're independent, they're exceptionally beneficial to us, and that they can cancel each other out when they're mixed together. And I don't have full understanding on all the whole sewing mix. You know, if it's really talking about like GMOs, like what man's doing with GMOs, or like even like you're talking about your windowsill. So it's good to consider our Father's instructions in all things, even the simplest things that seem to be no problem or that the world would perceive as not being an issue. But I'm thankful that you're not alone, brother. I contemplate these matters like you're talking about, the plants on the windowsill, and let it be that our Father show us and give us understanding in matters of His instructions, that we're able to walk in them and be found in His favor. Praise God. Did you have something, Jesse, that you was going to bring up about?
No.
Okay, just real quick.
I think it was Jacob that was going to speak, I think.
Sure.
Just real quick, Richard, with regard to Yeshua being a carpenter, there's if you do a study into the Aramaic of that, the word used in Aramaic is nagar, N-A-G-A-R, and what that means is that he was a teacher or an instructor. Literally, it means to be a builder of the house, which is always reference to the temple. So when you are a builder of the house, you are a teacher or instructor. And that's what nagar is. We interpret it as carpenter, like he swung a hammer and built walls, but that's not at all what it means.
I was gonna say something to what you guys were saying earlier. As we approach the feast and holy days, we're in the 6th month right now. As we approach the 7th month, more than Passover, more than the spring feast, the fall feast is when so much chaos prior to the feast, so much strife, arguments, fights, gossips, people not getting along. It's like all these spirits just unleash out of the pits, especially in the community, because it's just to discourage us, to tear us apart, to break us down from coming together to keep the feast. And they're very active, notice, so just want to, set aside just to say, let's just be on guard. Just want to put that in there. If you be very, very on guard.
Praise God, brother. You're right. I see that. That's becoming more and more apparent. Thank you.
Are there any other comments for chapter 22?
I can read 23 for us if you want.
Well, that'd be great. I don't know who's hosting right now, but that'd be wonderful, Richard. Thank you.
Few. We have a few here, but maybe I hope the horseman didn't. Maybe Chris tripped the horseman up or something. I don't know. But anyways, this is out of the ISR, the scriptures. He who is wounded by crushing of testicles or whose penis is cut off shall not enter into the community of Yudevave. A mamzer shall not enter the community of Yudevave. Even a 10th generation of his shall not enter the community of Yudevave. An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yudevave. Even a 10th generation of them shall not ever enter the assembly of Yudevave, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you came out of Mitzrayim, and because they hired against you, you Balaam son of Beor from Pethor of Aram Nahiyam, to curse you. But Yudevave, your Elohim, refused to listen to Balaam. And Yudevave, your Elohim, turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yudevave, your Elohim, loves you. Do not seek their peace nor their good all your days forever. Do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mitzrayim, because you were a stranger in his land. The children of the third generation born to them do not enter the assembly of Yudhevave. When the camp goes out against your enemies, then you shall guard yourself from every evil matter. When there is any man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, and he shall go outside the camp, let him not come into the midst of the camp. And it shall be at the approach of evening that he bathes with water. And when the sun sets, let him come into the midst of the camp. And you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out. And you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your excrement. For Yudhevave, your Elohim, walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be set apart, so that he does not see unclean matter among you, and shall turn away from you. You do not hand over to his master the slave who has escaped from his master to you. Let him dwell with you in your midst, in the place which he chooses within one of your gates. Where it is pleasing to him, do not oppress him. None of the daughters of Israel is to be a cult prostitute, nor any of the sons of Israel be a cult prostitute. Do not bring the harlot fee of a whore or the pay of a dog to the house of Yudhevave, your Elohim, for any vowed offering. For both of these are an abomination, Yudhevave, your Elohim. Do not lend or interest to your brother, interest of silver, interest of food, or interest of whatever is lent at interest. To a foreigner you lend at interest, but to your brother you do not lend at interest, so that Yudhevave, your Elohim, might bless you in all that you put your hand to in the land which you are entering to possess. When you make a vow to Yudhevave, your Elohim, do not delay to pay it. For you, Yudhevave, your Elohim, is certainly requiring it of you, and it shall be sin in you. But when you abstain from vowing, it is not sin in you. That which has gone from your lips you shall guard and do. For you voluntarily vowed to Yudhevave, your Elohim, what you have promised with your mouth. When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, you shall eat to the satisfaction of your desire, but do not put any in a receptacle of yours. When you come into your neighbor's standing grain, you shall pluck the heads with your hand, but do not use a sickle on your neighbor's standing grain.
Thank you, brother. Very good. So, I've got a thought on this chapter, and if anybody else has something else, that's fine. But I just want to ask this to you guys. Do you see a difference between what it means to be in the midst of the camp and outside of the camp while they are, moving around in a camp formation versus later on when they're inhabiting actual cities and everything like that? Does anybody else see a difference there? Because I kind of see a difference there. In other words, right? Are the people that will eventually come to live in Jerusalem and these other cities, are they supposed to go outside of the city and build latrines? I don't think that's what they did. I think they had, I think this is talking about in the actual camp with the tabernacle in the midst. I see a difference there. Anybody, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're outside, digging, outside the camp, right? You can also be out there, and if there's any spies or anything, you might come across some spy in the woods, right? That might be watching the camp, right? So by going outside the camp, in a strategic way, or you could also be seeing your enemies, but also like the scriptures say, you're also keeping that unholiness or that uncleanness out of the camp also. So the Father doesn't want anything unclean in the camp, right? But while you're taking that uncleanness out and burying excrement, you're also out there, and you can also see if there's any spies. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. What also stood out to me in this chapter was the part where it says, if you don't if you don't make a vow at all, then there is no sin in that. There is no sin in not vowing. And it reminds me of Yeshua saying, it's better not to make a vow at all. He said, don't swear at all. Just let your yes be yes, your no be no.
Right. Yeah. To swear, you swear in someone's name. Like you give the name of someone greater than you, than yourself. Like Scripture bears witness of Abba Yah swearing in his own name, for there was no one's name greater to swear it. Chris, if you give your word on your father's name, someone greater, swear is always on someone greater's name. We've lost touch with this in our culture. With words, but yeah, let your yes be yes and your no be no, like you're saying. Just do what you say. When you tell somebody you're gonna do something, just do it. Better off not to subject yourself by swearing under the name of someone greater, when you can just do what you say with your word.
Any other thoughts on 23? Comments, questions, thoughts?
Well, I like the part where at the end where Richard was saying how if you enter a neighbor's stand in grain, you may pluck the heads off and everything like that. This could also be in reference to when Yahushua's apostles had picked ears, right? Doesn't necessarily have to mean corn, but it could be the grains, right? Right there it says you can do it just as long as you're not doing it with a sickle, so.
Right, that's right.
In other words, you're not supposed to harvest and keep a whole bunch of it. But if you're hungry, you can walk through and eat of it without taking any with you.
We call that
absolutely
trailside nibbles, foraging. That's what it is. Basically the same thing. And is that really laborious anyway? I mean, if we really had to think about it, right? Is it really a laborious thing to pick a few trailside nibbles off a plant and eat them? I don't think so. And they were so upset about the hands not being washed, and oh, look what they're doing on the Shabbat. They're picking these, they were just finding these little finite things to nitpick at, and yet Yeshua just kept coming against them because they lacked the weightier matters of Torah, which is the love for their neighbors, their love for their neighbor, right? Again, in the parable of the Good Samaritan, showing us what a neighbor really is.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, sir.
On what verse is that about? Well, let's see, you have a sharp object here to bury your excrement. I believe there's a verse. I mean, it's all to keep the camp holy. I think there's a verse about when he walks amongst the camp. It's one of the reasons we do that. That probably we should be doing some of this in Sukkot.
Yeah, it's just about. I see that as about cleanliness. We don't want to get too detailed or graphic here, but we've been to some places where state parks or places where there's campgrounds, and there's been people that have not been tidy with their waste and all, and it invites disease and sickness and flies, and those flies get on that and then get on other things and get on your food, and they can contaminate your food, and they can spread germs. So this is really just good hygiene and cleanliness, and just keeping the camp in order and clean. And anybody who's been to a campsite where they haven't done that knows what I'm talking about. There's a reason why he's telling them to bury it, because we're essentially returning those elements to the earth, which will then naturally compost and be and they will be broken down by the microbial life, the life the web of life that exists in the topsoil. It breaks that stuff down naturally and feeds those organisms, and in turn those organisms make those nutrients available to the plant life, and there's just a great web of life in the topsoil. Billions, millions and millions and billions of little microorganisms going to work in there. There's mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria, helpful bacteria, and all these things. And so there's a reason for all these things, and there's multiple reasons for this, down to the microbial level that he's telling them, bury this stuff. Don't leave it out where I'm going to see it, because if you want me to be in your midst of your camp, we're going to have a camp that's ran decently and in order, and it's going to be clean. So that's something that we should be mindful of during Sukkot and at all times of the year if we're out camping, or we don't, that we have good practices about waste management. And that's a whole nother line of discussion too on that topic, on how today, in many places we are essentially flushing our waste down into our drinking water in many cities and many metro areas, and that is not a good way to handle that. It really isn't. The septic systems are a little bit better designed, but the best way really, that I've learned of is really the composting method. If you can have a way to do that in a sanitary way, and I wouldn't grow strawberries in the stuff, but you could put around fruit trees or other trees or areas that are non-edible plants. I know that Brother Paul Mead,
yeah, he does that.
and he, as far as I know, he's eating kale and cabbage out of his stuff. I mean, I don't know if I'd do that with it, but bless him and pray God protect him from anything. But this is what Yah designed, to be recycled into the earth, to be put back, the nutrients to be put back, and then to be used for the plant life to feed people again, or to grow shade trees or utility plants, for cordage and wood and all these things. So but I just see that as a necessity even today, that we need to have good waste management practices, and not just with our bodily waste, but with other waste too. Not leave trash around and litter. I'm gonna tell you what, it really agitates me when I'm driving through any area, whether it's a nature preserve or whether it's just a highway through a city. But when I see trash just laying on the side of the road, where people just throwing cups out and plastic bags and all that, I understand sometimes you might have your window down and something accidentally flies out, and if that happens to me, I actually try to pull over and go back and find it and pick it up, because I can't stand the thought of that stuff being just sitting there on the side of the road. And all the things that we make with plastic today, plastic takes so long to break down. It's not very biodegradable, and yet everything you get now has plastic. And this stuff doesn't break down easily to return to the earth. So I think that there's a whole nother line of thinking there. As Torah followers of Yeshua, disciples of Yeshua, that we should have good hygienic practices, good waste management practices, and to be stewards of the planet that we're on right now, and be mindful of that. So,
Only one other question, Chris, I had on this, that I always sort of didn't get is, when there's any man among you who is not clean because of a mission in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come into the midst of the camp. So, I mean, is this guy going to come up and tell you? How are you going to know if we had an emission? Of course, we all know what that emission is.
Brother Richard, what version Bible you got?
This is the ISR. This is the script.
Okay, all right. Okay, cool. Well, it's very detailed Bible. Love it.
Yeah, it's very detailed. But I'm just wondering. So, how are we going to know? How is one going to know?
Yeah. Well, I see this thing about the camp. I see the camp as being different than when they're dwelling in the cities and things. But there's still an issue of being in an unclean state, and we know that's the case, not only for the man but the woman too, if they've had relations with each other, and that they're in an unclean state after that because of the bodily fluids and emissions and all that. So for the sake of cleanliness, they're supposed to wash and cleanse themselves. And again, this is speaking to good hygienic practices. You don't just lay around in your filth. You don't go off along on your, throughout your day and just leave yourself in a soiled condition. You go clean yourself. And this is again, these types of hygienic practices can prevent diseases and sicknesses. I mean, look at all these widespread diseases and plagues that happen, and most of it was because of poor hygienic practices. People, the bubonic plague, all these things. People were not handling their waste properly. People were not cleansing themselves on a regular basis, and with water and all, and especially moving water. Moving water is the best. If you can have moving water, that's the best scenario, because it's flowing out and it's rinsing out, and then again, those impurities and things are returned to the earth in a natural way where they're broken down, and they're But when we have concentrated areas of waste, like septic tanks and the landfills and all these places, it's just sewers. Those are concentrations of pathogens and bad germs and all, and it's just it's not designed to be. Brother John, you had something on 22?
Yeah, I have actually two different things. One's on 22, one's on 23, but I'll tell you the one on 22. 22:5, right, where it says, a woman shall not wear the man's clothes, nor shall a man put on a woman's clothing. For whoever does these things, it is an abomination to the Lord your God. Well, aside from the obvious, right, of not wearing, of transgenderism or whatever, I have a side note that I found before that said in one of these references like that, where it wasn't just talking about gender, but also a military reasoning also for not wearing, a woman not wearing a men's raiments, because men's raiments were also a military thing as well, like carrying like swords and various things. That's not a woman's place, So I wanted to make that note. If anybody else had heard anything like that before,
I don't
So what if all the men are, what if all the men, they went to war and there's another army that comes against the camp while the women are there?
Yeah, I think
women cannot pick up shovels and axe and everything and sort them off.
I think where that understanding comes from is the Hebrew word that's used there for men is actually gibor, which means like warrior or mighty man, mighty person. Giborim, is warriors or soldiers, men of valor, I guess. So when it uses gibor in that verse in the Hebrew, I think some people glean that to mean military raiment like that. I've heard that before, but I don't see that context there. I see it as speaking plainly, because he says it for both cases, right? The man does not wear what pertains to the woman, which I believe that should say Isha, right? And then the woman doesn't wear what's pertaining to the gibor, the man or the warrior. But still, they would. I mean, we know that they both wore, a lot of them wore garments that we would consider to be like robes, robes, and many still in the Middle Eastern culture still wear robes to this day. A lot of them wear linen robes, because it's a cool garment. When you're in the more arid and hot climates, that's a cooling garment. It allows your body to breathe and everything. So in that sense, maybe they both wear robes, but it's saying the woman should not wear anything beyond the robe that you would normally wear that would pertain to a gibor, a man that would have things. But how do we apply that today? Because we have to be able to take these passages from the Torah and also apply them today too, right? So today, because we have a slightly, not slightly, a very different cultural, lay of the land today, I think that the way we would apply that today is, we know today that we know for the most part what types of clothes that men wear and what types of clothing that women wear. And so in the cultural context of where we're at, we should abide by that to the best degree we can, and not try to blur the lines like is being intentionally done with the young people of this generation now. This younger generation, I got to, people I know of that are, well, not even young people. I know people that are, 20 years old, 20-year-old young men that are wearing blue jeans tight. I mean, I don't think anybody should wear jeans that tight because it looks like it could hurt somebody, no matter what gender you are. But they're just wearing clothing and they're wearing more, feminine type garments and stuff, and the other vice versa for women today. So the enemy would love nothing more than to continue to blur the lines between genders and confuse people and just these are doctrines of demons that foster these ideas and things. They're not people don't do these things naturally. They don't just come up with this idea on their own. These are doctrines of demons, and they whisper in people's ears and they confuse people and it's not funny. People think it's funny to dress up a little kid, a little boy as a girl, and they laugh and they think it's cute, but it's really not funny. It's not. What does the scripture say right there? It's an abomination. So we shouldn't do it.
Well, brother, it's. Oh, sorry. Did you have I can't see if anybody has their hand up. Sorry. It's just. It's so bizarre today that you can't. I don't know where you guys live, but sometimes in LA you cannot tell a man from a woman. I remember one of our brothers, Brother Harold, that was preyed on by this mother and daughter. They ran into them on a train, and they said that Brother Harold's wife is in a wheelchair and they wanted to help him out. This was when they were coming back from Sukkot last year. And I was in New York, and I met with them in New York, and they brought this mother and daughter that they met on the train that's been living in their house. And they said, they're just helping us. They saw that we need help. And they were from a different country. And I looked at her and I was like, you are not a woman. And I didn't want to say anything to Brother Harold because I was very concerned. And it just pressed on me that you have this person living in your house. To later find out that they actually do this to people. They prey on elderlies and they go and live with them. And in New York, if they've stayed with you for over 30 days, then they become they can have residency in your house. You have to evict them. So we were able to get them out on the 28th day. And Brother Harold, he could not believe it. He's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "That is a man." And because it whatever that person did it so well that you could not tell. Eventually, it was revealed that it was a man. So I think more of what this verse is also saying is that don't act like a woman if you're a man, and don't act like a man if you're a woman. And with all this masculinity and women just pumping weights, wanting to look muscular and big and want to wear like man's boots and look butch and cut their hair short and everything. It's crazy nowadays. You just can't. Even when you go to some clothing stores, you're like, is that a man's or a woman's? You made that for man, and that's what's going on. They're starting to blend the image of a man and a woman together. And they are trying to make it one through an abomination instead of being one the way Father wants them to be one, as in covenant unto him. It's crazy.
Yes. I want to say Shabbat Shalom to Brother Kevin, who's just joining us. He's connecting with us for the first time from, I believe, from the London area there, United Kingdom. So you guys just welcome him. He's really wanted to plug in with reading the Torah with us and studying this and following Yeshua. So welcome, brother. Thanks for joining in. Okay, so we
Chris?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment on the clothing issue. And this is something I am struggling with. I just want to share because, I work in corporate America, and I'm not sure how many on the call work in corporate America and if it's beyond corporate America, but they, we have LGBTQ, however many letters, clubs, transgenders, and it's really, really promoted at work. And this whole inclusion, transgender issue going on, it's just permeating. It's like, should I be working for a company that's promoting this? But there's this gentleman at where I work, and he is transitioning. I don't know if he's formally transitioning, but he dresses like a girl, and he goes by the name of Emma. And totally, the female shoes, the tight, pants rolled up at the bottom, and the girl tops and the purses. But he's clearly a man, and it's such a struggle for me to even say, should I be working in an environment that supports this? And I struggle with, having that in my face all the time at work. And then I feel like, am I violating Yah by working for a company that supports that? I don't know.
Lisa, I work in corporate America too. Okay, go ahead, finish. I'm glad you're.
Well, no, I was just saying that's a struggle for me when I see, that and all the pride symbolism and Gay Pride Month and on, and it's a struggle for me. Like, I sit there and think, should I be even working here? So go ahead, Jim.
So Lisa, I'm glad you brought that up, because I share the same thing. Like our company just celebrated the month of the Muslim month. What do you call that? Where they all do this slaughtering of all these animals and everything that, and actually in Minnesota, 50,000 Muslims just got together in the dome to say Allahu Akbar and do their prayer to celebration to their gods. And our company actually celebrated, and our department, the business development department, celebrated that. So I wasn't a part of it, but we cannot avoid it, but we can abstain from it. How do we do that? Look at Daniel in Babylon. You want to work for the Gentile of kings? They worked in politics with a king that is nothing but serious abomination. I'm talking that he had all these people out there, including these people were there too. The Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were there. And they wouldn't give them names after their gods. And these young men were there, and they had the timbrels and the flutes, every kind of noise. All the magistrates, all the leaders from all over the world were there. But yet, this people did not bow to it. See, that's where we come in. We live among them, we work among them, we work with them. One of the guys, what's his name, in captivity, was a cupbearer to the king. Who knows what in the world was in the cup? And he has to taste it. I'm sure it's wine, but still, who knew where the wine came from, where the wine was sacrificed to, who it was prayed to? But he had to be there in the presence of the king, and he was the cupbearer. He didn't say, hey, because this king is a Gentile of Gentiles. This king is so we have to, as long as we do not partake in how they worship, and we do not partake in their sins and everything, we can still be there and be a light and do our job until our job forces us to compromise our faith, which nowadays they can't force us to do that. They can't force us to celebrate their Christmas party. They can force us to, there's so much lawsuits going on nowadays that the companies are so careful to have you partake in anything outside what exactly is your duty that they do just for the fun of it. So I hope that helps.
Very good, very good. I see kind of two sides to that issue. Sister Lisa and Lori said she's in a similar situation with the social work she's doing. And there's a lot of us, brothers and sisters, that are in situations like that, where we're working in a place and there's things that we just completely counter to the way we live, and it can be it can be really challenging to even exist in an office space or in a work environment where we see those things around us. So I would say that on the ones, I mean, everything is with discernment, first of all, and that there's not one person on this call that can tell you what to do in your situation other than what the Torah instructs us to do and not do. But like Jacob pointed out, that we have precedent in the scriptures where we have Israelites that are in Babylon, they're in the midst of these things. How do we correlate that to today's time? Well, if you think about it, we are all of us that are here, in the United States or United Kingdom or Canada, we are all living, or pretty much anywhere in the world, we are all living under, for the most part, secular governments that promote this very kind of thing. They promote alternative lifestyle. They promote abortion. They promote evolution being taught in schools. So they're supposed to be secular and neutral, and yet they are not neutral at all. They have agendas that they push and they foist on the people in passive ways and sometimes aggressive ways. And this is happening across the world, not just in the United States, but other places too. So we live within that framework. So we could pose the same question in a larger sense to, like what you're saying, like, should I work there? Well, should we live here? Should we live in a place? But then when you do that, there's really like, where can you live and where can you go? At the end of the day, we are set apart people, and we are in the world and not of it. We are in this world, but we're not of. We're just sojourning through here. But I want to point out another side to this that you may not have considered, and this is why discernment is important. How do you know? How can you know that by being and remaining and enduring in that work environment, that you could be light and salt to somebody who's in bondage to that kind of a spiritual affliction or possession or whatever, that kind of perversion or any other kind of, abominable practices and things that are unrighteous? How do you know whether or not you might be light and salt to those people? By being different, by being a peculiar person in the midst of Babylon, in the midst of Egypt, in the midst of the fire. And remember who that fourth one was in the fire with those three young Israelites, right? When they were put in that fire because they wouldn't bow the knee, they wouldn't bend the knee to the idols and the Baals and all these things. And there was a fourth one in the fire. Yeshua is with us. Yah is with us in these places. And if he has led you to that place, if that is your portion, that is your source of income that he's allowed you to have for a season or for multiple seasons or whatever, it has to be discernment as to whether you stay and endure or whether you depart from that place and you find other work, or maybe you start your own business and do that in Yeshua's name and see that he blesses you in that. But there are always things to consider in that kind of a situation. And so I can't say, and no one here can say, well, you should stay there or you should go, because that is a matter of discernment and you need to seek the Father on that. But I hope that what Jacob shared and what I've said and others may share could help you in that. So you have anything else on that?
No, that was really, really helpful. Thank you both.
Okay, so we better move on to chapter 24. So would somebody like to read 24 for us, please?
I'll read it, Chris.
Okay, yeah, Deuteronomy 24.
When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanness in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce, puts it in her hand, and sends her out of his house. When she has departed from his house and goes and becomes another man's wife, if the latter husband detests her and writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of his house, or if the latter husband dies who took her as his wife, then her former husband who divorced her must not take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord, and you shall not bring sin on the land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. When a man has taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war or be charged with any business. He shall be free at home 1 year, and bring happiness to his wife, whom he has taken. No man shall take the lower or the upper millstone in pledge, for he has taken one's living in pledge. If a man is found kidnapping any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and mistreats him or sells him, then that kidnapper shall die, and you shall put away the evil from among you. Take heed, and in an outbreak of leprosy, that you carefully observe and do according to all that the priests, the Levites, shall teach you, just as I commanded them, so you shall be careful to do. Remember what the Lord your God did to Miriam on the way when you came out of Egypt. When you lend your brother anything, you shall not go into his house to get his pledge. You shall stand outside, and the man to whom you lend shall bring the pledge out to you. And if a man is poor, you shall not keep his pledge overnight. You shall in any case return to the pledge to him again when the sun goes down, that he may sleep in his own garment and bless you, and it shall be righteous to you before the Lord your God. You shall not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, whether one of your brethren or one of the aliens who is in your land within your gates. Each day you shall give him his wages, and not let the sun go down on it, for he is poor, and he has set his heart on it, lest he cry out against you to the Lord, and it be sin to you. Fathers shall not be put to death for their children, nor shall children be put to death for their fathers. A person shall be put to death for his own sin. You shall not prevent justice, do the stranger or the fatherless, nor take a widow's garment as a pledge. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this thing. When you reap your harvest in your field, and forage a sheep in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive tree, you shall not go over the bough again. It shall be for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, you shall not glean it afterward. It shall be for the stranger and the fatherless and the widow, and you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore I command you to do this thing.
Thank you. Okay, a lot of material there. Any comments or questions on this chapter, please?
Yeah, Chris, I'd just like to once again point out a translation deficiency in my scripture compared to what was just written. I think I did this a couple of weeks ago on something else. The Bible that I have here is the JPS, which I think I'm going to have to look around for something else because I'm not entirely happy with it now. But this first verse that was just refers to the uncleanliness, where it says, verse 1, if she not find favor in his eyes because he has found some uncleanliness in her, then let him write a bill of divorce. Uncleanliness, there is the same word we just were looking at for nudity. It's erva, meaning nudity or shame or disgrace. And my scripture that I have here, this version, sides with the I guess the more the Jewish traditions of being able to divorce, because mine reads, a man takes a wife and possesses her. She fails to please him because he finds something obnoxious about her and writes her a bill of divorcement. So I think obnoxious, we hear about if literally if back then if they burnt toast or did something they didn't care for, they just spin 3 times around, say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and they'd be divorced. I think that the version that was originally read there is a lot more telling than mine. Just
Yeah.
wanted to point that out.
The words are everything, aren't they? The right wording is everything. I mean, it can change just one word, one slight alteration or whatever can just change the entire meaning of a passage, and then people can create entire doctrines out of these things, and cults and other things, So it's just we got to guard and study, and brother, I don't know that I would toss that version out, but maybe just have another one too that you can kind of bounce. I use an app called My Sword, and it allows me to switch through some different versions. I know a lot of people prefer just having an actual physical Bible with pages, and that's cool too. But it is good to have a few different several that I kind of bounce around in and study with and see what they say. But of course, also having either an interlinear on hand or that having that concordance and lexicon or whatever at your side there is good too when you're studying. So.
Right.
I want.
I just wanted.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things that I do, because I know there's potentially translation issues and such, and so kind of my habit is to have a couple of different versions. Like I was reading from the New King James, but I also have the Sefer, and so I like to cross-reference and use my Strongs as well to make sure I'm fully comprehending. Because as you were talking about what your version states, I looked at it in the Sefer as well, and it uses the same term, uncleanness. So I like to personally cross-reference or have a few different because I wanna fully understand, and a dictionary as well. Those are kind of my tools, but yeah. Go ahead now.
I agree. I always study with eSword on my computer with the different versions, but this is the one I have here because I always like the Hebrew next to it. But the more I look at this thing, and more I see where there's been a lot of. I'm not going to toss it out by any means, but the more I look at it, the more I see there's a lot of the traditional views of the sages and the rabbis over the years that have been interjected into this thing, because you find something obnoxious. If my wife were to snore and wake me up at night, that would be obnoxious, and I could divorce her for it. And that's not at all what Yah intended.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I like how when we all read together like this, some of us have different versions like that, and we can kind of see, or as we're following along in ours, what the differences are there. And I think it's actually better than if we just had. I mean, there's some places where you go and everybody they all kind of try to get on the same version, and they'll have like congregational Bibles too, whatever, where they're all the Tree of Life or all the Scriptures or whatever. But I think it's really actually a little bit better study when you have some different versions and we're following along in ours, and we can say, hey, mine says this. It's actually a little bit more fruitful, I think, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and to confirm that, Chris, actually in the Tree of Life, it says something indecent.
Yeah, I mean, it's there are times when these. It's unfortunate. It's sad. I shouldn't even say unfortunate. That's not a good word to use. But it is sad that divorce is a very real issue, and it's widespread. It's much more pervasive than it should be. But there are cases where people do get divorced and all. But the Torah is outlining a framework for how that's done, and it should be done with a written bill of divorce. And not this putting away or separating, put them away and they leave them in a cruel state where they can't continue on with their life, whatever. And Yeshua addresses that too. And there's actually two different Greek words that are used in the passages where he's addressing divorce and remarriage and all that. And it's apoluo and apostasia. That's a whole nother study for another time. But it's the difference between divorce and putting away. Putting away was a cruel practice that is still being done today. in Israel and in other countries where, you know, people have a problem with their wife or whatever, and they just kind of leave them. They leave them, and they don't even really officially divorce them. Even, you know, they just leave them. And I'm not saying that divorce. I'm not saying divorce is Yah's ideal standard for any marriage, but to leave somebody in a state of limbo like that intentionally, almost spitefully, to leave them in a state of limbo where they can't, you know, move on and get and you know, with their life or whatever is a cruel practice. And Moshe, you know, presented the framework for how it's done, to do it with a bill of divorce in writing. In Hebrew, it's called a get. A get. It's a written bill of divorce in writing that actually you know, severs that. So, but again, this topic is something we could go on for hours about, and so let's see if anybody else has anything on chapter 24.
Can I just say one thing about a get is a contract, and it involves the entire family. The father's involved in all the other stuff, so it's not just a divorce. It's a lot more complicated than that. That's more of a Jewish practice than an Israelite practice.
All right. Anybody else on 24 here?
Just that, you know, I just think just the institution of marriage, of having to be married, and, you know, like you said before we talked, you know, that it's can go into a quite extensive study, but, you know, when we do that, we're actually handing over our rights for our kids. They can take our kids and do what they wish with us, you know, when we do that. And I don't really see any people getting married so far as, you know, like they do now, you know, just you went in the tent, you know.
You talking about the marriage, the whole marriage license and all these
Yeah, the whole
things?
marriage thing, you know.
I mean, there's definitely precedent for the celebration of the wedding. You know, this kind of the ceremony and celebration. There's precedent for that. In fact, we see Yeshua actually goes to a wedding and turns water into wine at the behest of his mother. But that's not necessarily a requirement. I mean, we see where Eliezer goes and finds a wife for Yitzhak and brings Rivka back with him, puts a ring in her nose and a bracelet on her arm and brings her back, and it says that, you know, she covered her face with her veil, and she saw, you know, it's kind of a romantic thing, right? She sees Yitzhak, and Yitzhak sees her, and he takes her into his tent, the tent that used to be his mother's. So there's, I mean, no, it doesn't say that they had a fattened calf or anything there. I mean, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But this business about, you know, the civil laws and the things that we live within today, where people are going to get marriage licenses, I just don't see why, you know, you need to have permission. Why? I mean, we have licenses for everything here in the United States. I don't know how it is in other places, but here you have to have a license to go fishing. You have to have a license to hunt, and I understand they have reasons for things and all. You have to have a license to drive. That one might actually be a good idea, you know, because of some of the craziness out there. But you know, this business about getting a permission slip from the government, from your county or whatever, your local county or whatever, to get married is, you know, there's no place for the government has no place in who you love and spend your life with and commit to. But that's the way of the world. This is the secular version of what Yah has put forth as a marriage covenant. This is a secular version of that, you know, and it's really kind of a counterfeit one. And yeah, people go and get divorces all day long, and I mean, it's a booming business. You see billboards all over the place of divorce lawyers, and they make tons of money off this. The government makes money off of all the court fees and costs and everything, and it's really sad because it's ripping families apart. And it's what's even more sad is when you know, the believers have to go through this. You know, even, you know, there's people that are unequally yoked, but then there's ones that are where they're both believers and they still go through this. So it's sad. It's sad, and we really need to seek restoration and put Yah first in our marriage, you know, for it to work. So But let's go on to 25. Brother Richard, would you mind reading 25 just to verse 19? We could spend a lot of time talking about marriage and divorce and remarriage, but we'll go on to 25 if that's okay, and maybe we can have another study on that sometime in more detail.
I'll read it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're just going to verse 19 in chapter 25 there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is out of the King James Version. If there be a controversy between men, and they come unto judgment, that the judges may judge them, then they shall justify the righteous and condemn the wicked. And it shall be, if the wicked man be worthy to be beaten, that the judge shall cause him to lie down and to be beaten before his face, according to his fault, by a certain number. 40 stripes he may give him, and not exceed, lest if he should exceed and beat him above these with many stripes, then thy brothers should seem vile unto thee. Thou shalt not muzzle the ox when he treadeth out the corn. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate unto the elders, and say, My husband's brother refuses to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. Then the elders of his city shall call him, and speak unto him, and if he stand to it, and say, I like not to take her, then shall his brother's wife come unto him in the presence of the elders, and loose his shoe from off his foot, and spit in his face, and shall answer and say, So shall it be done unto that man that will not build up his brother's house. And his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that hath his shoe loosed. When men strive together one with another, and the wife of the one draweth near for to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and putteth forth her hand, and taketh him by the secrets, then thou shalt cut off her hand, thine eye shall not pity her. Thou shalt not have in thy bag divers weights, a great and a small. Thou shalt not have in thine house divers measures, a great and a small. But thou shalt have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure shalt thou have, that thy days may be lengthened into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. For all that do such things, and all that do unrighteously, are an abomination unto the Lord thy God. Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way, when ye were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote thee hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God giveth thee rest from all thy enemies round about in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it.
Thank you. Okay. Any thoughts on this chapter here?
Yeah, what does it mean by diver's weight?
Oh, that's talking about unfair weights and measures as it pertains to currency and business and transactions and purchases. So, some people would put like, for example, let's use terminology from the scripture. So, like if you have a shekel, right? You have a shekel of the sanctuary. That's a measurement that's based on a sanctuary established weight of silver or gold or whatever, right? So to have diverse weights would be like, okay, somebody buys a pound of salt, right? And so sometimes your salt is a little less than a pound, and maybe it's intentional because you're trying to, you're skimming a little off, so you're still making the same amount that you would on a pound of salt, but it's not quite a pound of salt. You know, they would use salt as currency. They would use other things, spices, different things. But it's diverse weights is talking about that. It's talking about, you know, let's be fair in our business practices, and how, you know, how do we relate that to today's time? Well, I think that we need to be mindful of, you know, the type of currency that we're using today to transact business. You know, we're using a paper currency, and most of the world has fiat currency, which means it's not backed by anything tangible other than the promise of a government that it has value. But you know, there was a time here in the United States when our money was backed by gold and silver. In fact, the coinage prior to 1965 was 90% silver, 10% copper with the coins, and so that actually had tangible, real value to those metals. But now, you know, quarters, dimes, nickels, they're all made out of alloys with zinc and all. You could probably actually have more nutritional value from a dime today than you would monetary value if you really consider the melt value. I mean, it's terrible. And even pennies, even the pennies today, the pennies that are 1982 and older are copper, but anything newer than 1982 is actually zinc as well. It's a zinc alloy and not copper. So the older pennies that are 1982 and older are actually worth right now about 2 cents in their melt value, which is double the face value of a penny. But the newer ones are next to nothing in value because it's very cheap zinc alloy metal. So the Torah is telling us that we need to use honest weights and measures, and to not skim, to not, you know, try to be unfair in our business practices.
Well, I just have to say my sincere apologies to everybody for completely butchering the word diverse. I think I said divers.
Oh, no problem. So yeah, I guess that would be a whole nother thing, right? Divers weights are the ones that help you stay at the bottom of the water, right?
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah. What version was that you were reading from, sister? That was the New King James, you said?
Yeah, the King James Version.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think that the New King James as well as the King James uses that same word when Yeshua is giving his discourse on the Mount of Olives in Matthew 24, I believe, I believe it's Matthew 24, where he says, in those versions it says, there will be earthquakes in diverse places. And I'm not trying to get too far off on a tangent here about the end times and all, but you know, he says there will be earthquakes in diverse places, and it says that in those versions. He uses that same word, diverse places, and I believe that to mean that it's going to be earthquakes everywhere, in all places, and not just some places. But anyway, it's a whole nother line of discussion. Any other thoughts on?
Praise
God. Go ahead.
Yeah, I back up what you're talking about. I believe, you know, the pure alloy. You know, it's interesting. For thousands of years, a man's daily wage was a piece of silver about the size of a dime, all the way up to the early 1900s, when they made the Federal Reserve and banknotes, and the bankers' notes were just notes that were tied to the value of a precious metal, so silver or gold or copper or something, to be redeemed for. But them guys totally raped and pillaged and lied and wrote out notes for gold and silver that didn't exist, thus leading up to the Great Depression in the early 30s. And then they removed it from the bills altogether. When Kennedy came around, 1965 through 70, they started taking the silver out of the coins. By 1970, you didn't have any silver in the coins, not alone on the silver certificate note, bank notes. So yeah, what we handle today, and up to 1982, like Chris said, they pulled the copper finally out of the pennies. So they raped and pillaged it all. And today we don't carry an equal or just the stuff that we're carrying is not straight. I agree with that. In that chapter, one thing that stood out to me was the duty of a brother. To perform the duty of a brother. I think that's interesting because I see it happening twice in the lineage of Messiah. It says Messiah came by way of Yehuda and Tamar, which through Paret, one of the two sons born to Tamar. And by the way of the story in Ruth, Boaz was a redeemer. So someone was nearer than him, but redeemed Ruth to that instruction and the duty of the brother. I see the importance. Our father's talking about the key to it was that so your brother's name not be blotted out of Israel. That a son go on to carry on his inheritance. Boaz would have raised up that child through Ruth on behalf of Naomi's house, her husband's house, that his inheritance be put into that son's hands to carry on his brother's name. Anyway, I just find it very interesting because Yehuda, he butchered it. Like, he got reprimanded with his sons. The first one died, and then Onan, our father, took his life, and the other one, that was Judah. That was his responsibility to see to that, and that didn't take place like it was supposed to. So it's interesting. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on how that applies to today.
Well, I don't know how if anybody else has anything on that, but I kind of see it as another one of those situations where, you know, the way of the world is completely contrary to that concept, you know, in the Torah, you know, and there's people that would read that probably even within the body that would say, wow, I wouldn't want anything to do. I don't want anything to do with my brother's wife, you know. I got my own thing going on or whatever, and this is the difference in the mindset of those that are of the nations and those that are in his set apart nation. And he puts a really strong focus, a strong emphasis on the continuation of a man's line, of a man's seed, you know, his children, their progeny, and that there's an importance in that with Yah, and he's pointing that out here in the instructions. So, but it's just a different mindset altogether. You know, those are the nations, and we don't consider that today, you know.
Is it because we're so selfish today? We're living in the days of selfishness that we only got our own thing going on, and the government and the world is just shuffling us off. I mean, even our children, and a lot of our parents in the world, they don't even see their children hardly much at all. They're more or less eat breakfast and dinner with their own children. You know, they're shuffled off and segregated out and separated. I mean, because as soon as possible. Back in the day, back in the text, it says that when Lot, Sarah's brother, when he ran into problems in Saddam, in Amorah down there, that the people, inhabitants of Saddam and Amorah got captured by a neighboring city or something. Lot and all his goods were gone with it. So Abraham went to retrieve Lot and his family and all his goods and rescue them. And Abraham went with 318 trained servants born unto him in his own house. So they took responsibility, just like Chuck were reading in Deuteronomy 22, like you said, the mindset, to look after your brother's goods. If your brother's goods ends up at your door, you know, make sure it gets it back to him. You look after your brother. People were more, our father's telling us to be more concerned with our family, our mitzvah, those of our brothers and sisters in the kingdom. Than with our own selves, to love each other as ourselves. I mean, so this I see as the line of that. When the way they talk about it, Boaz went and said, this woman, you know, her household, she's willing to redeem. Naomi couldn't even have children anymore. She told her daughter, you know, I don't have any more sons, but I'm too old. But so Ruth the Moabitess came and delivered that child onto Naomi's lap as a son of Naomi. You know, and the people of the town even rejoiced at the son born unto Naomi. So she, in a way, as a sister, redeemed her sister. You know, in a way that a brother would. But is it because we're selfish? I mean, look at Onan. Onan was being selfish. I don't know how else to explain it. Onan, who our father took his life because he didn't provide seed on behalf of his brother. But I don't know. I just wonder why. I believe you're right. It's a totally different mindset, and I'm afraid. I don't want to be in that mindset of the selfish one. I want to understand and embrace my Father's instructions and not feel awkward about it, but I want to understand it. So I call out to my brothers and sisters to share their heart on these words that our Father speaks to us. But some of them are difficult to swallow because they don't seem right. They seem, like you said, they're different mindset. Praise God.
All right. Well, another good thing to read on that note is the book of Ruth, of course, and you reference that too. But that shows the Boaz as the kinsman redeemer. Although he wasn't a direct brother of the next one in line in the family, but he came to that man first, and he didn't want to marry Ruth, so he redeemed her, the kinsman redeemer, and there's a picture of Yeshua and the bride there too. So that's a good read for further insight on that subject matter. Anybody else on 25 here before we go on to Isaiah?
I just think that I have a note in my Bible that talks in chapter 24 about Ruth also, where she benefited from the law in verse 24:19, where you reap your harvest in your field and have forgotten the sheaf of the field. You shall not go back and get it. It shall be for the alien, for the orphan, and for the widow, in order that the Lord your God may bless you in your work of your hands. So she used that law also. So I thought it was interesting how you used both Ruth in that last chapter right there. I thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah, that's right, brother. And the more, see, there's a principle at work here. That when we do the Shema and when we read the Shema passages, it talks about, we talk about it when we rise up, when we lie down, when we walk, when we teach it to our kids. The more that we go through the Torah and the more we study, the more we do. And sometimes it can seem repetitious, but what happens with repetition is then committed to memory, and these are, and then the more we study the Torah, then the more we see it lived out. We see the models of it being lived out, the blessings that come from living it out and the curses that come from disobeying. We see throughout the rest of the scriptures and the narratives that happen, and it's just, and these things start to leap out at you, and you say, that's in the Torah, that's in the instructions. And so this is why we do this, and we go through it year after year. And you don't have to read the Torah portions on the same schedule that we're on, but Yah does command us to read it every year and to teach it to our kids, and also whether you do it in the fashion that we are with these Torah portions, kind of on the same reading schedule as others around the world, or you do it on your own time and in your own way, but do it every year and study it. Don't just read and breeze through it, but study it out and glean from it. And I really like how we do the Torah portions from week to week, because if you can take the time to read it, in other words, like tomorrow, right? Don't wait until next Shabbat to read the Torah portion that's next week, right? Go ahead and read it tomorrow if you can. And there's a lot of us that are blessed to not have to work in our occupational jobs on the first day of the week, although we should be working to some degree on that day because it says to work for 6 days. But if you have time on the first day of the week, go ahead and read the Torah portion for that week at the very first day, and then think about it. Think about it throughout your week and see what you can glean from that. Just let it be in your thoughts that week, that portion. And then by the time you get to the next Torah study, you've already been considering this, you've already been thinking about it and pondering it and studying it. And then when we go through it chapter by chapter, you might have even more to share than normal, than you normally would just reading it for the first time on Shabbat. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue to study on your own time if you can. And is there anything else on this passage before we go to Isaiah? All right, let's go on to the passage from Isaiah then, please. We'll see who wants to read that here. Isaiah chapter 52, verses 13 through chapter 54, verse 10. Would somebody like to read that? It's about a chapter and a half there.
I'll read it, Chris.
Okay, brother, thank you.
This is some of my favorite verses here, the way it describes Yeshua.
Amen.
It's amazing. 52:13. Indeed, my servant shall prosper, be exalted and raised to great heights. Just as the many were appalled at him, so disfigured was his appearance, unlike that of any man, his form beyond human semblance. Just so he shall startle many nations, kings shall be silenced because of him, for they shall see what he has not been told them, shall behold what they have never heard. Who can believe what we have heard, upon whom the arm of the Lord has been revealed? For he has grown by his favor like a tree crown, like a tree trunk out of arid ground. He had no form or beauty that we should look at him, no charm that we should find him pleasing. He was despised, shunned by men, a man suffering, familiar with disease, as one who hid his face from us. He was despised. We held him of no account. Yet it was our sickness that he was bearing, our suffering that he endured. We accounted him plagued, smitten and afflicted by God. But he was wounded because of our sins, crushed because of our iniquities. He bore the chastisement that made us whole, and by his bruises we were healed. We all went astray like sheep, each going his own way, and the Lord visited upon him the guilt of us all. He was maltreated, yet he was submissive. He did not open his mouth. Like a sheep being led to slaughter, like a ewe dumb before those who shear her, he did not open his mouth. By oppressive judgment he was taken away. Who could describe his abode? For he was cut off from the land of the living. Through the sin of my people who deserved the punishment, and his grave was set among the wicked, and with the rich in his death. Though he had done no injustice and had spoken no falsehood, but the Lord chose to crush him by disease, that if he made himself an offering for guilt, he might see offspring and have long life, and that through him the Lord's purpose might prosper. Out of his anguish he shall see it. He shall enjoy it. He shall enjoy it to the full through his devotion. My righteous servant makes many righteous. It is their punishment that he bears. Assuredly I will give him many as his portion. He shall receive the multitude of his spoil, for he exposed himself to death and was numbered among the sinners, whereas he bore the guilt of many and made intercession for sinners. Shout, O barren one, you who bore no child. Shout aloud for joy, you who did not travail, for the children of the wife forlorn shall outnumber those of the espoused, said the Lord. Enlarge the side of your tent, extend the size of your dwelling, do not stint. Lengthen the ropes and drive the pegs firm, for you shall spread out to the right and to the left. Your offspring shall dispossess nations and shall people the desolate towns. Fear not, you shall not be ashamed. Do not cringe, you shall not be disgraced. For you shall forget the reproach of your mouth and remember no more the shame of your widowhood. For he who made you will espouse you. His name is Lord of hosts, or Jehovah of hosts. The Holy One of Israel will redeem you. He is called out, God of all the earth. The Lord has called you back as a wife forlorn and forsaken. Can one cast off the wife of his youth, said your God? For a while I forsook you, but with vast love I will bring you back. In slight anger for a moment I hid my face from you, but with kindness everlasting I will take you back in love, said the Lord your Redeemer. For this to me is like the waters of Noah. As I swore that the waters of Noah never more would flood the earth, so I swear that I will not be angry with you or rebuke you. For the mountains may move and the hills be shaken, but my loyalty shall never move from you, nor my covenant of friendship shall be taken, said the Lord who takes you back in love. Unhappy, storm-tossed one, uncomforted, I will lay carbuncles as your building stones, and make your foundations of sapphires. I will make your battlements of rubies and your gates of precious stones, the whole encircling wall of gems. And all your children shall be disciples of the Lord, and great shall be the happiness of your children, and you shall be established through righteousness. You shall be safe. I'm sorry, did I go too far?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I was getting carried away.
It's okay. It's all good in it. It's all, and no weapon formed against you will prosper, right? Amen. Amen. Yes. So, any thoughts or comments on these passages? What powerful, powerful prophecies of Yeshua here, and just redemption, and what he says about his covenant. And remember about the covenant, that even though we've broken the covenant, that he made Abraham to go into a deep sleep and pass through the pieces on our behalf of that original covenant with Abraham in the first place. Hallelujah. Any thoughts or questions or comments?
Only that the last part there where it says the stones, I'll make your walls precious stones. It's talking about New Jerusalem.
Where's that?
I just like to say that the description given of Yeshua here is we know from this that he was nothing spectacular to look at. He wasn't any very striking, handsome man. He was just an ordinary person. If you were to pass him on the street, you'd have no way of knowing who he in fact was truly was. You know, by his appearance, by his dress, his humbleness. And I kind of feel the same way about Samson. We always have these pictures in our minds of some massive muscular person who rips his gates out and runs them up to the top of a hill miles away from where he tore them out from. But I think that if he actually looked that way, that people would realize that maybe it is his own strength that he gathers from, and not from the strength of Yah. So I think that Samson too was a very ordinary looking person. Nothing spectacular about him that really stood out, other than the fact that he had the long hair and let his hair grow. But his overall physical appearance, I think, was just very, very normal for anybody else of that day.
Well, interestingly enough, on that note, the scriptures do make a point to tell us about, Shaul before he became king, and of course David as well, that they were, good-looking people. So it makes it a point to share that information with us, and then yet we have this in Isaiah, speaking of Mashiach, the king, the king to come, the Prince of Peace, and yet he's not someone that we look on and esteem him, because of his outward appearance. It's like flipping the entire script here, of what they're looking for this. I think we talked about this maybe a week or so ago. They were looking for this William Wallace type figure to come and just conquer the Romans and free Jerusalem and Israel and restore the kingdom to the former glory of Solomon's days and all these things. They were looking for that, all that physical. They wanted all that in the physical, and we still long for that today. I know we do. We in our hearts, we want to see the evil crushed and peace and everything, shalom restored. But they were expecting that in that day, and he came in a much more different fashion than what they expected, and so they didn't esteem him at all. And but hallelujah, thankfully he stayed on that stake, and he took it for all of us. He took that for all of us. by his stripes and by his wounds. All right. Well, if there's nothing else on that, then let's go and see what our good master has to say in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 27 through 32. Would somebody like to read that one for us, please, and see the words of Yeshua? Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 32. Anybody who hasn't read yet that wants to read? If not, somebody else can read again if you want. Just trying to get everybody.
Five what?
5, chapter 5, verses 27 through 32. Matthew chapter 5, 27 through 32.
I'll read that. No problem.
Thank you, brother.
Okay. This is from New American Standard Version. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say unto you that anyone who looks on a woman to lust for her has committed adultery with her already in his heart. And if your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. For it is better for you that one of the parts of your body perish than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you. For it is better for you that one of the parts of your body perish than for your whole body to go into hell. And it was said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of dismissal. But I say unto you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the cause of unchastity, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. And again, you have heard that the ancients were told, you shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, make no oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no, or anything beyond these is of evil. Was that it?
Yeah, verse 32 there, yeah. Okay, so again, here we see in the words of Yeshua covering quite a bit of the subject matter that we read today in the Torah. So what is he teaching from here? Is he bringing new teachings? Is he adding to the Torah here? Or is he giving us deeper insight into what those instructions are telling us? You know, the issue, of course, of lusting is lusting after someone is adultery in the heart. You know, if they're married, and lusting after somebody when you're not married is fornication in the heart, right? I mean, there's different all these things that we can transgress physically. They all start out as intentions or thoughts in our heart, and this is why we're told to take every thought captive. Every thought and every imagination, we take it captive. You know, and we die daily. This battle that we're in with the spirit versus the flesh, that Shaul tells us about again and again too. You know, and all these things around us, all the stimulus, all the you know, the temptations and the trials, everything around us. We're living in the world and not of it. And Yeshua is bringing deeper meaning, deeper insight into the Torah passages that we just read. And so what a powerful teacher. And how can we, again, like I said last week, how can we take the greatest teacher that's ever walked on this planet and separate him from his teachings? How can we say that the law has been set aside? How can we say the instructions have been done away with and they're no longer necessary when the greatest teacher taught them right out of the Torah that we're reading today?
Yeah, I think too, Chris, that first verse we read there, at verse 27, Yeshua is referring there, while he is referring to a commandment, he's also referring to the way it's been misinterpreted by the sages of the time, because he says that you have heard it said, and whenever he says you have heard it said, he's referring to what was being taught by the rabbis.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be you have seen it written, or you have it is written.
That's right. That's right. And
So,
some of
so
the things referring to that they
I like that.
yeah, he's
That was good. That opened my eyes. I'm sorry, that opened my eyes so much. There's a difference. Yeah, he always say it is written, you know, that you read in the scriptures and this, but then when it's said, you've heard, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, all I was going to say is that some of the things he says, you have heard it said, they are from Torah, but like Max, what you're saying is that they were teaching doctrines based on that, and you know, putting traditions in with it and all, and so he's clarifying. He's absolutely clarifying and bringing us back to the Torah. You have heard it said. You've heard. He does the same thing with the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, that's in the Torah. But you have heard it said as if it's this phrase, it's this doctrinal position or whatever, that whatever somebody does to you, you can do to them. And when you read in the Torah about eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, there's two very specific cases for that. One of which happens to be injuring a child that's unborn a mother that's carrying a child. If the child is injured by an attacker or an assault, then that is one of the prescriptions for eye, tooth for tooth. It's not just this wanton, you know, take revenge on anybody you want because they hurt you and you hurt them. And Yeshua, again, he fleshes that out for us and says, hey, turn the other cheek, you know, go the extra mile. You know,
Brother, but he's not necessarily doing away with that law. He's just saying, forget about it. You know, he's just saying, you know what, they smack you, forget about it. You know, that's just what, turn the other cheek. It's best to walk away, you know. I don't believe he's actually saying, you know, hey, that law does not any longer apply. Because if somebody takes your eye, you know, then you have to give the measurement of what that eye is worth, what the family requires of you. I believe that still stands, you know, because in the court of law today, you know, if you steal something, you know, you serve time and then you pay restitution and everything. That's so. But I think he's just trying to show the heart of it. Like, you know what? I think he's the first one that came up with forget about it.
Yeah, I just see it as, you know, I mean, from what I understand, they had taken that out of the Torah and had used that as an excuse that if somebody punches you in the cheek, you get to punch them in the cheek. If somebody kicks you in the shin, you get to kick them in the shin, you know, and that's not what it says in the Torah. It doesn't say that. It's not saying that, to do that as like a revenge, eye for eye kind of thing. It was a specific consequence for somebody who assaulted a pregnant woman with a nursing child. So he's saying, you have heard it said, this phrase, right? You know, but I tell you, you know, don't do it that way. Turn the other cheek, you know, do these things. Love your enemies, do good to those who despise you. He's flipping the script on the traditions that they had built around things that they did pull out of Torah, but they're like verse plucking, like what's done today. You know, so many people today verse pluck. They take one passage and they build these entire doctrines and statements of faith and denominational groups on you know, on one little verse by itself with no context. It happened. It's so widespread. It's crazy, right? And Yeshua's just telling them, look, you know, you've heard it said, but that's not how it's written. You know, it's not what it was intended to be when it was written. You know, so, and it's all through the Torah. People have done that for years. And he came against the Pharisees more than anybody else because they were teaching us commandments, the doctrines of men, traditions and things. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Or how about Brother Kevin? Are you have any thoughts on that, brother?
Flipped your mic off. It's on mute, Kevin. Your mic's on mute. Just touch your, yeah.
I got
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Brother Kevin.
Yeah, so yeah. I was I've read before, I believe in Proverbs where it says if what's in your heart comes out your mouth. Also, just reading through that was maybe what's in your heart comes out your eye. Do you know what I mean? With imaginary. So if it's in your heart, it might come out of your eye. Can someone give me some feedback on that?
Can you say that one more time, brother?
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is, I've read in Proverbs. I'm pretty sure I've read in Proverbs before that what's in your heart sometimes comes out your mouth. If you're right, eye causes you to sin. Is it from your heart that it comes to your eye? Could someone give me a bit of feedback on that?
Oh, that's a good thought. Yeah. So, in the Proverbs, I think it says, out of the mouth proceeds every form of wickedness and vile speech or whatever, something like that, right, guys?
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Out of the mouth, the heart speaks.
Yeah, and then Yeshua reconfirms that by saying, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out of his mouth. And he's speaking specifically to the Pharisees that had a problem with hand washing. His disciples hadn't washed their hands before they ate, and he was speaking on that, not on the subject of unclean foods or things that aren't even food, but on the subject of hand washing. But he says out of the, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, but what comes out of the mouth. And so, and then, in a similar way, the eyes, right? So what goes into your eyes, there are times where you're going to see things that you shouldn't see. And this is part of that taking every thought captive, that this is where the war begins, right? It's the inputs.
Or in other places, it's written, guard your heart.
Yeah,
guard
and guard to do these things. Whatever influences we have around us, like I was saying earlier, the temptation, the stimulus, all these things around us, the billboards, the advertising, all the noise from radio and TV and internet, all these things. There are going to be things that flash by and come on and whatever that just are not edifying and are, can lead to temptation. And so when they come into your eyes, it's not that those things defile you right when they come into your eyes, but if you let them in, if you bring them into your heart, if you feed off of those things and nurture them and don't take those thoughts captive, then they absolutely do have the potential to defile you and also to become strongholds where there's even unclean spirits that can attach and harm and stuff. So those kind of afflictions, they come because we give them legal ground. And I'll tell you, just as an example, actually a very big issue with the eyes, especially for believers, is pornography, and lusting and all. This is something that we just read, right? You lust after them, you've already committed adultery in your heart. When you consume that material, and you say, or maybe say, I don't look at that kind of stuff. But if you're watching HBO or you're watching Cinemax and you're watching these movies that have even fleeting scenes of nudity and stuff like that, when you do that, when you consume that, what are you inviting into your heart? What are you receiving into your heart? You have no idea the kind of portals that you're opening up when you give yourself over to those kind of things coming into your eyes and into your ears and into your home. And I want to just paint a picture for you here. When you're doing those things, remember that Yah sees everything we do, that he sees everything we do. And it's not, you might think you're alone at the computer or you've got the TV going and, the kids aren't around, whatever it is, but, Yah sees it. And so whatever you're sitting there watching on television or your internet screen or whatever, you're sitting there watching it with the Most High. Remember that, that whatever you consume like that, you're watching it with the Most High. If you go into a strip club or whatever, and you're consuming that, Yah sees that, he sees what you're doing there. You're not, it's not like you're hidden from the rest of the world or whatever. He sees. And the things that you see, he sees, and it breaks his heart. And especially if you're a believer, if you call yourself a set apart one and you're doing those things, It is time to repent and turn away from that and never do it again, because that invites all kinds of spiritual bondage and affliction on people, and they have no idea, and it's so widespread. I mean, our kids are being exposed to this kind of stuff, magazines and just stuff on their phones, and people sending message. We got 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and 13-year-olds sending each other pictures on Snapchat because it erases itself after a few minutes or whatever. This is happening all over, and we have to just be on guard, like what Jesse reminded us. Be on guard to guard our hearts. Go ahead, Brother Max.
I think John had his hand up first.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what Kevin was saying, it does it come from our heart out our eye? And I'm thinking if it's in our heart, that we need to clean up that heart first. If it causes our eye to purposely seek out what that sin might be. So I think the key thing, whether it's coming out of our mouth or coming out of our eye, or causing our eye to stray or whatever, it's our heart that we have to make sure that we have in check. That was it.
Thank you, Max. You explained it better than I did.
I just wanted to say that's an excellent observation Kevin made there. Is we've said many times that the eye is the window to the soul, but I would go beyond that and say that if you go back to the ancient Hebrew, the word for evil is ra, which is the resh and the ayin, which literally means man's view, or as man sees things. So as man sees things, it is evil. So I think that's a really good point there that Kevin brought up.
Yeah, what I've found myself is that if something like that does happen, I've got to shut it down very quickly. Do you know what I mean? Because it will just take me to places I don't want to go. So just shut it down very quickly and try and make inroads into maybe not going down that particular place or whatever. Whatever the occasion is, because obviously we live in the world, and it's summertime over here at the moment. Say no more.
Okay, go ahead, Brother Tobiah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
they can.
Definitely.
Yeah, we can.
Oh,
Okay,
you're
just making
Dahlia.
sure.
You're not Tobiah. You're Dahlia. Go ahead, sister.
Yeah, it's okay. I just wanted to say, okay, I've come across this, and I'm sure you have too, Chris.
Now I can't hear you.
Oh, I think
when we're praying for people, and so I really that you lose a member of your. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, the audio is cutting off and on, so it's kind of it's cutting you off a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
How about now?
Yeah,
Okay. So if
I don't know if you have a full signal bars on your phone, or if you got a spot that's a little better than the one you're in, but it's cutting you off again. I don't know if you can hear me. Well, I really wanted to hear what she had to say. Hopefully she can get back some signal there. So we'll come back to her in a second here. Anybody else have some thoughts on that while we're waiting for her to come back? All right, are you back there? Can you hear us? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
I wanted to make sure. Okay, yeah. Hopefully she'll come back, but I wanted to hear what she had to say. But anyway, yeah. Any other thoughts on this?
Okay,
line?
can you hear me?
A little bit. It's still kind of.
I'm gonna call in, so just watch for me to call in.
Yes, please do. I want to hear what you were going to say. Yes. Okay, we'll wait. All right, praise Yah. So let's, while we're waiting for her to come back, would somebody like to bring up 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 5, and then we'll read that while we're waiting for Dahlia to get dialed in there.
I'll volunteer for that one.
Thank
All
you.
right. I'm New American Standard Version again.
Okay.
It is actually reported that there is immortality among you, and immortality of such a kind as does not exist even among the Gentiles. That someone has his father's wife. Did I say immortality? No, I'm sorry, I meant immorality. Immorality. I'm sorry. And you have become arrogant and have not mourned instead, in order that the one who had done this deed might be removed from your midst. For I, on my part, though absent in body, but present in spirit, have already judged him who has so committed this as though I were present. In the name of our Lord Jesus, when you are assembled, and I with you in spirit, with the power of our Lord Jesus. For I have decided to deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus.
All right. So Dahlia, he just read 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1 through 5, but do you want to go ahead and share what you were going to say?
Yes, okay. So like I was saying, I know you and I have both seen it a lot in people that we've tried to help, especially people coming off of drugs or addictions like alcohol, people that seem to have some kind of spiritual connection where they can't put down cigarettes or anything like that. Because those of us who have been delivered from it, if you've been delivered from anything, know that when you truly, truly seek Abba to deliver you, it seems like we should just be able to walk away from it. If that's what we've, once you've done that, then we don't understand those who can't do that. But here's the thing: what if you can't stop going to the computer and looking up the porn site? What if you can't stop yourself? It's just like you are totally overtaken. And you know that so long as you have access to that you're going to do it. Then wouldn't it be better than ending up in hell to cut your eyes out? That's what it's saying.
Well, that's what he says, but I
defile your body by putting stuff in your mouth by your hand. Cut your hands off.
But I'll tell you what people aren't willing to give up, even before it comes to their eye. What they're not willing to give up in those times and in those situations is they're not willing to give up their smartphone. They're not willing to give up their TV. They're not willing to give up their cable or their satellite TV subscription. They're not willing to give up their computer, their laptop.
Exactly, because
to get rid of those things.
That spirit is so strong in them. That spirit is so strong that it overtakes them. So it'd be better if they cannot give it up, to not be able to access it at all.
I agree, but I think that people seriously need to be able to give up their devices or whatever the vector is, and then they wouldn't they wouldn't even need to get to the point of giving up an eye. But he's saying that that's how serious this matter is. That it's better to go to enter into an eternal life with one eye or be maimed than to have both eyes and not to be cast out in outer darkness. So, I mean, why is it then that people can't just give up there are phones that you can get today. They're not as nice. They don't have as many features, but you can get yourself a little flip phone with the actual numeric digits on it still, and use that to make calls and stuff. You don't have to have the whole worldwide internet at your disposal at every moment. And so I would say to the one who is in a situation like that, the first thing that you need to do is get rid of the vectors, and almost really just as important is to, number two, is to have accountability and confess your sins with your mouth to other brothers or sisters that you can be accountable to. Those two things: remove the vectors, remove the points of temptation, and have accountability with righteous brothers and sisters that will hold you accountable. And those two things there, and repenting, first it's got to be a repentant heart in the first place before you're going to remove and before you're going to be accountable. But there is power in confessing with your mouth in the presence of other brothers and sisters. There's power in that, because as soon as you do that, you take those things that were hidden, those things that you were doing in secret, those things that no one else knew about except for Yah, but you're taking it, the light, you're exposing it. You're exposing it, and then Hasatan doesn't have that power over you anymore. He doesn't have it hidden. You put it out there. You make yourself vulnerable. You allow yourself to be broken enough to confess and come out with these things that you've been doing and say, I need help. I can't do it on my own. And that's the broken and contrite heart that Yah is looking for in each and every one of us with whatever we're struggling with. Whatever our vice is, that's the broken and contrite heart that he's looking for, that we can just say it out loud and say, I need help. I've been doing this and I'm ashamed and I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it another moment of my life doing this sin anymore, and I need help. I need my arms raised up like Moses on the mountain. I need help. And that, when you confess with your mouth, there is power in that. You're bringing those sins out into the light, and evil, the darkness can't vanquish the light of Yeshua. It cannot stand.
Yeah, that's a blessing. That is just saying, the brothers that dwell together, amongst one another, because they can help one another with that, be accountable with that, and so on, and not have to cut off the hand or whatever. I see it as our Father. The eye isn't something we generally see as a taking forth of our action, like we speak words with our mouth. That's an action. We put forth what we put our hands to, find them as a sign upon frontlets between your eyes. And so, I see our Father blessing us with all these things, all the gifts that we have, this smell, sight, hearing. But if we're not responsible enough to monitor over them and have self-control, we're better off not to have access to whatever it is that's causing us to not have self-control. What I see the verse speaking of. But our brother, I remember our brother's name, Shabbat Shalom to the new brother here. Horrible with names, but I remember his question.
Yeah,
talking
Kevin.
about the eye, and what came to mind was also when our sister was talking about things that she deals with at work, that trouble, that bothersome to her, that she is not comfortable to be around, that she doesn't like being subjected to. Applies to this verse in 2 Peter chapter 2, where it talks about Lot. It's 2 Peter 2:7. I got it in the ISR 7 verses 7 and 8. He said, he rescued righteous Lot, who was oppressed with the indecent behavior of the lawless. For day after day, that righteous man dwelling among them tortured his righteous being by seeing and hearing their lawlessness. So that verse spoke to me quite a while back, many months ago, concerning like what Lot's daughters were twisted up in their minds when they went and lay with their own father. And I see it as being attributed to what they were subjected to, the lawlessness and wrongness, the crudeness and lewdness and things that took place in that city, that they were subjected to, what they seen and heard day by day. So day after day, that righteous man dwelling among them tortured his righteous being by seeing and hearing their lawlessness. So what our eyes take in, what we put them and subject them to, there's a song, I think, is be careful, little eyes, what you see. And be careful, little ears, what you hear. Like, guard and protect these things that that best we can, because they do have an effect on ourselves and our children, what we're subjected to. Even trying to be right in our heart, it's fighting against our heart, subjecting our eyes to these things. The enemy's got many tools today to use to lure us into transgression. And I pray for my brothers and sisters, and when you pray for one another, to overcome and have control of ourselves, to not be taken away by those things.
Amen. Amen.
To help one another with that. Praise Yah.
Praise Yah. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, or anything on the passage we've read today here? The passages.
I think it goes back to what the Father has said. By the way, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. But he said everybody needs to have their heart circumcised, and those that are struggling is we fight, and Paul says it. There's three things against us: the world, ourselves, which is our flesh, and the enemy.
Amen.
And we like you said, we need to renew our hearts every single day. But the Father's looking for us to circumcise our hearts at every moment in time. And how do you do that? By the renewing of the word in our mind every single day. This isn't a one-time deal. And those that don't want to, they're gonna fall. Either they're weak in the flesh because they're not fasting or praying or reading the word as they should. I'm not saying that we're gonna be perfect, but we are to sanctify ourselves, make ourselves set apart, and this is something we have to do. It's not everything, like in the Christian world where, oh, God will provide. No, Yah will provide, and He has provided for us His word so that we can wash ourselves with it daily. At every moment, at every time, and meditate in the word and speak the word and be able to be strong in the word.
Amen.
But it's not of our own doing. The Ruach does help us. However, He does ask us to do our part. And if we're not doing our part, then why does He have to do anything else? He's already done more. He sacrificed His Son. He gave us the word. He lets us live every single day. We have so many blessings that we just deny or we just push aside, and we just sit back and lay back because we think we're deserving and we're supposed to be kings, and we just sit in our chairs and look at whatever. The end. Now, it's a sacrifice that we have to make. We have to sacrifice our own flesh every single day. We have to sacrifice things. Yes, we do need our brothers and sisters to help us out and encourage us. But if we're pushing people, then there's not going to be any encouragement. If we're not seeking people's help, we're not going to be able to do it on our own. Yeah. It's not by our own strength. It's by the strength of the Father. Amen. That, helps us every single day. We can't do this on our own. We can't say and sit here, oh, this person can't. Yes, there are strongholds, but is this person seeking help to get rid of those strongholds? Is this person admitting that they have strongholds? The Pharisees were not admitting anything. They didn't care. They weren't going to, because they had their stronghold and they were prideful. Sin was in them, and just like then, it is today. Sin is the stronghold we open for the enemy to attack us and put shackles on us.
Legal ground.
But we do that.
Yep.
We open that door.
So can I say something? I just want to, okay, like what Lisa was saying, in my job, I work for the Salvation Army, and that is an organization that slaps God on their, and it's really a godless organization. But like where I struggle, not only do I case manage homeless families, and I have to work with all sorts of people. but this organization is also forces you to participate. Like they ring bells for money, or I have to take Christmas gifts, and they do all these big Christmas programs that you have to participate in. And so that goes against every fiber of my being, but yet that's something that if I don't do, I'm insubordinate and could lose my job. So that's where my struggle is.
I would definitely pray about that, because that's a little bit more immersive in those things that are contrary to his ways. And if you're being forced to, essentially participate in Christmas type, traditions and all, I mean, yeah, that's tough. I mean, that's really tough. And so, and I don't want to sound, like, I don't want to sound like it's like, how should I word this? I don't want to sound like I'm not empathizing or whatever, but because I know that jobs are important, but in the same way that he says it's better if you go into the kingdom with one eye than to lose your soul in Gehenna, in the same sense, it's better that, we enter the kingdom jobless and maybe a little bit more broke than we'd like to be. But it'd be better to enter his kingdom in that fashion than to to gain the whole world and lose our soul. So again, I would say that that's a really big deal that you need to seek the Father on, and we do have a really high emphasis on where our paychecks come from today. I mean, that's a big deal to people. I'm not trivializing it at all, but we have to really determine in our hearts every day whom we're going to serve. Are we going to serve Yah, or are we going to serve other interests? And if those interests are basically demanding that you do these things that are contrary, to what you know in your heart, then at some point, sooner or later, you're gonna have a reckoning with that, one day or another. And so I would just pray, sister, pray for Yah to reveal to you what He would have you do. I don't know that I would personally abide in a job like that, and that's tough to say. It's tough to say that when you have children that are dependent on you for income and all that, but you have to remember where everything comes from. You have to remember where every bit of resource comes from. Everything that's in our checking account, everything that's on our debit card, every bit of cash in our wallet or coins in our pocket, or if we don't have those things, every little bit of vegetables that we're growing in our raised bed garden, every little bit of, wherever we're staying, whether it's an apartment or a house that we own or we think we own or whatever, But I mean, everything we have is something that Yah has allowed us to be a steward of, and it all really ultimately comes from Him. So is the person that you work for your boss, or is the Most High Elohim your boss? Who really is your employer, and what really is your mission and your occupation? And I'm not telling everybody to go out and quit their jobs, ad hoc, but I'm just saying that you got to have discernment, and you got to pray and seek His will for your life. He may have something for you to do that's going to blow your mind. He may have something for you that, and it may be something that you make less at. You may make less income doing it, but when He has you doing what He wants you to do, that's the best place you can ever be, is in His will for you, right? So He'll make up the difference. And I say that I say something similar to those that have trouble, working on the Shabbat. When they have a job where they got to work on the Shabbat, and they say, well, what should I do? What should I do? And I tell them, look, the scriptures are very clear that we're not supposed to work on that day. We're supposed to set it apart to Him. So you're either of the nations or you are of Yah. That's it. We don't have a third option. Yah says we can't sit here and be on the fence. We can't be lukewarm, because it makes Him want to vomit us out of His mouth. He's saying, you're either hot or cold. There's no mixing here, and so I say to those people, look at what the Word says, and then do accordingly. Do accordingly to what it says, and trust Him that He will make up the difference. What happened on the seventh day? On the sixth day, on the preparation day, the Israelites gathered twice as much on that day. They gathered twice as much on that day so that they would have something on the Shabbat, and He made up the difference. He made up the difference. And I believe, whether I'm working a job that is allowing me to take the Shabbat off, or whether I have my own business, my own means of income, all that ultimately comes from Yah. And I believe this, that if I'm a business owner and I have my own business, And the world tells me, everyone in the world wants to tell me, oh, you're gonna close on Shabbat. You know, let's say you had a restaurant. Oh, you're not going to be open on Saturdays. That's where a lot of your business is going to come from. You're not going to make it. You're going to have lower sales on stuff. I believe that if you honor the Sabbath, which is the gateway to the entire Torah, if you honor that Sabbath, He's going to make up the difference. There's not going to be a deficit when you're walking in the ways of Yah Elohim Most High. He's not going to let you, be cursed when you're following His instructions that come with obedience. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope that you can prayerfully consider that and just have conversations with Him about it and let Him lead you into what He really has for you.
Yeah, that was very helpful, and it's not just Christmas; it's every holiday. And I've just been struggling and talking with my sister, just saying, I just don't feel right being here. So, but yeah, it was helpful.
I think it'd be nice to help all of us at the end pray for her so that the Father will provide a way out and open up a new door or a window for her.
Absolutely. And I want, and Sister Catherine, what you shared was just so on point too, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I just want to say on that note that if there's anybody that's struggling in unrepented sin on a regular basis, whatever it is, whatever that stronghold may be, that it is true. We can't rescue ourselves out of that. We already talked about the idea of self-rescue. I think it was last week. We can't self-rescue ourselves, but we can receive that deliverance, right, in faith. And I just want to give this example. If someone is drowning in the water, they're in over their head and they're going down, and someone throws them a lifesaver or swims over them to take their hand, and they refuse that hand, they refuse that life preserver, they refuse that means of deliverance, and they remain in the water, then that's surely death will follow. Death is imminent. And I would say that somebody who's going back and returning to their vomit, right, like that every day, every night, whatever, struggling and whatever sin that is, I would seriously question whether that person really is a set apart one. Even if they can keep the Shabbat, they can praise Yah's name, they can sing songs, they can pray, they can do all the things and look like a believer. But if they're going back and returning their vomit day after day after day, are they really set apart? And Yah clearly says, if you're not with me, then you're against me. So it's in His Word. It's not me. It's not Chris saying it. It's not Brother Jacob saying it or anybody else. It's in Yah's Word. And that's why we read this Torah and we read Yeshua's words as well on the Torah, so that we can know these things and hide them in our hearts so we don't sin against Him.
I want to encourage you by actually I want to encourage you. I've seen a lot of brothers and sisters in my own household and out that have dealt with their jobs, their employment getting in the way of their walk. And I've seen it work for two ways. I've seen, interestingly, I've seen a brother, or more than one brother, just get the raw into the deal, so to speak. Like, they were good to their employer. They were loyal and good employee, and they got just surprisingly like a left hook from out of nowhere. Like they got done wrong by somebody at work or some situation at work, and they were put out of their job wrongfully. But it was our Father's hand that did it, because our Father had a different plan for them. They didn't even know about it until later. Like, our Father was moving them along to a different place. He wanted to separate them from that cup. But I've also seen it be where it was like the Sabbath was in the way, for instance. And she put her notice in to her job because the job said, you got to work every other Sabbath. Everybody has to do it. It's company policy. So she's like, well, I'm sorry. I made a decision that I'm keeping the Sabbath, so I'm going to have to. I like my job, but I can't do that. So yeah. I've watched the person like that was willing to. They made the call. They made the decision. I've watched our father. Our father didn't want him to take the job. Matter of fact, the second week of the 2-week notice, her job called her up and said, we want to want you to stay. We're going to let you go ahead and have the Sabbath off. Like you say, we won't ask you to work the Sabbath, and we're going to give you a promotion. You know, so it's like I've seen him separate from their employment. I've seen him not be separate from employment, but blessed their employment, because it's like our Father was testing them to see, you know, and choose this day whom you shall serve. And so I just pray for discernment, because it's only going to be, as you would know, and as Father makes it be known to you, what He's calling for you to do. And I pray that you have clarity and discernment and whatever it is that you come upon, and that you always try to choose His will, even when everybody around you might look at you like, "What are you doing? That don't make sense." So the world would look at us and go, "Well, that doesn't sound right. I don't know. Well, it's not reasonable what you're choosing to do." But if it's of our Father, then we trust in Him. So part of our walk, we have to. There might not necessarily be another way made known to us yet. We just might have to trust that our Father has a way made already, and we know that what is before us is not for us, and it's not what He wants for us. Praise God. Thank you for sharing, sister, and be encouraged to just keep focusing on Him, and He'll make all your paths straight.
Amen. Amen. Anybody else before we go ahead and close here? All right. Well, brothers and sisters, it's been a wonderful Torah discussion of the scriptures here today, and reading these words from our Father and the truths He has for us. I just pray every one of you have been blessed today. And I pray that you take these things that you've heard today to heart, and search these matters out in your heart, and just be echad with the Father, be echad with His heart and Yeshua, be one with Him in everything that we do, and just guard our hearts and our minds, our eyes, our ears, our mouths, and what we put our hands to, where we put our feet. And would someone feel led, Brother Max, or somebody would feel led to close us out in prayer, please?
Sure, I'll pray. Loving and King, our Father and King, we come before you on this Shabbat and give thanks, Lord, for the time that we have had studying your word together. Lord, studying not only the Torah portion, but the description of Messiah, Yeshua, that you sent, Lord, to die for our sins, die a horrible death, as we saw described in what we read in Isaiah. And Father, for those of us that we've been talking about these problems with employers and with those who have these sins that beset us, the cherished sins, things that we cling on to, that don't want to let go of, we pray, Father, for your guidance, for your word to continue to convict our hearts, to be with us, Lord, and to give us the discernment that we need to set these things aside and put them away and not come back to them like a dog to its vomit. Lord, we pray for your strength in these things, for we know we are not able to do them ourselves. We give thanks in all these things, Lord, and just pray for your guidance throughout this week, that we all are able to return back next week, Lord, for further study. Guide us, Lord, each day in the words that we pick up, in the words that we read, that everything that we do is done to your glory. We ask these things all in the name of your Son, Yeshua. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Thank you. So please go out this week and find at least one person. Find one person to share your faith with, share your testimony with, to pray with, and go and make disciples, right? Go and teach, go and share, and be that peculiar person in the midst of the world that we're living in, and do it in Yeshua's name. You know, that's what He asks us to do. So find somebody. Just find one person this week, and then come back next Shabbat and tell us about it, because that's what we call a praise report. Hallelujah. And Brother Jacob, are you or Eliyahu doing a Hebrew study today at 3:30 Pacific?
Yes, and we're going to have quite a few people joining. You know, we're going over the feast and holy days. Back to the basics.
All right. So please join in again on this Zoom channel at 3:30 Pacific time for a wonderful study with Eliyahu and Jacob James. And I say Shabbat Shalom to every one of you in Yeshua's name.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Ready, say it.
Shabbat shalom.